Hey everyone, welcome to episode 4 of Critical, the History of Pro Wrestling Video Games. I'm Mongo, joined as always by my co-host Liger Busa, and as always, how are you doing this week, bud?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I started orientation at my new job on Thursday. It's currently Saturday as we record this, so we'll have a more conclusive answer to that when we record episode 5. So this week we're gonna go down the rabbit hole of the worldwide leader of sports entertainment once again, as we're covering the THQ era of WWE games. We did kind of cover some THQ WWF games at the end, but this is the summer of '02 through the fall of 2012, and all points in between, unfortunately. And before we get there, we kind of tacked the news on at the ass end of last week's show, and I feel like we should probably get it out of the way at the start this week, you think?
Yeah.
All right, so where do you want to start? Do you want to start with the AEW news? Because that's probably the most substantial of everything.
Yeah, I think that's the best place to start with this week, yeah.
Okay, so Matt Black from WrestleZone, I believe it was, reported that AEW Fight Forever is set to launch day one on Xbox Game Pass, which was a report confirmed by Mike Straw that he had heard the same thing from several sources. AEW Games issued a 2-tweet thread that basically read like, "Don't believe anything that doesn't come from us. The next official update is at Full Gear," which is, as we're recording this, it's next Saturday. By the time this gets uploaded, it will be this Saturday. And Mike Straw also released an article the following day about the release window, which February 2023, which is the PlayStation Network database placeholder date, seems to be the sweet spot. And also, if they do drop a release date trailer at Full Gear for a February 7th, 2023 release, that's the usual 2.5 month window for THQ Nordic Games. So this all kind of adds up. But I've also, for anybody that follows me on Twitter that listens to this, I've been horrifically wrong over the last like year and a half over updates on this game. So I don't know shit. That's what I'm telling you. I'm just guessing at this point.
The tweet from AEW was almost like annoyed that that was reported, the Game Pass thing. So my initial reaction was like, were they more upset that they wanted to break the news first? I know they sort of kind of denied it, but not really straight up. So I wonder if it really is going to come out on Game Pass after all.
So in the Discord server, the community manager from THQ Nordic basically one day, because there was all the speculation about like the news and stuff that was coming out, basically said like, yeah, don't believe anything Kenny says. He's not actually developing the game. Like the only official channels are going to be from THQ Nordic and AEW Games themselves. It did kind of feel like they were mad that got broken before they got to break it. And I think we talked about this a bit. I know I've talked about this with a number of people since the report came out. Game Pass is an incredibly smart way to get this game in the hands of people that probably would have never touched it otherwise.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it would be a great idea to have it up there on day one.
Yeah, it would. It's in their absolute best interest to figure out how to make that work. Now, granted, if they didn't get like a suitable like financial incentive, then I get it. But if you're getting a couple of million or even a million plus like a couple of dollars off of every download, that's probably going to nicely supplement the people who just buy the game that don't have Game Pass on the Xbox consoles. And also, the game's going to do well on PS4 and 5, I'm sure. And the Switch version, it's the first major wrestling game on the Switch in five and a half years by the time it comes out. Even if that game's not optimized for the Switch, it's still going to do well on launch. I think Game Pass is an incredibly smart way for them to, because think about it. I don't know what the Xbox UI looks like, so somebody please correct me if I'm wrong. But I'm assuming if you go in and look at the library of games on Game Pass, you see like a splash image of the cover. There are bound to be people that don't know AEW has a video game coming out because, if I'm being honest, they've been terrible at fucking letting people know it's a thing that even exists. There's bound to be people that don't know there's another wrestling game coming out. Like, say you're somebody who only watches WWE and you see that splash image with fucking CM Punk on it. You're probably going to be interested in that game for at least a couple of seconds until you see that it doesn't look like 2K. But even then, it's a wrestling game with CM Punk, and it's got Sting and Chris Jericho and John Moxley and Darby Allin and hopefully at some point Danhausen. Like that's you're probably going to give that game a try at the very least, especially if it's part of your Game Pass subscription. So I think Game Pass is absolutely that's essential for them. I think if they can get that deal done.
Yeah, I don't have Game Pass myself anymore, but as soon as you open it up, they, show the games that are new to the service. There's actually, a section for recently added, which is where I would always go and find out what's coming up and what's new. And definitely, if people see that, why wouldn't they download it, right?
Yeah, it's everybody on that cover with the, I guess, exceptions of like Britt, Jade, and Kenny are people that if you were a WWE fan a few years ago, you're going to recognize them. And even if you're just somebody who like browses Twitter, you're still going to know who the other three are because they're top stars in the other company. And WWE fans who say they don't watch AEW seem to know a lot about AEW. So
Yeah, I think it would be a win-win for them to put it on Game Pass. So,
absolutely. Plus, our buddies at Ultra Pro Wrestling,
oh boy.
who, see, he knows what's coming because I've been very nice about a lot of things I've said about that project on here. To the point that I've had multiple people DM me like, I keep waiting for you to go off on them and you just never do. Here it is. They posted a video on Twitter with the text, is UPW the new No Mercy? And I can answer that question for you definitively. It's no. But it's, again, Hardcore Heaven Ring, Rob Van Dam, and Taz with those wrestlers' names on the fucking like spirit meters. We talked with Dave about this last week. Riling up the WWE's lawyers is probably not a great idea because you have people that are following you because you're posting the ECW related content. And it's not an if. When WWE tells you you've got to take all of that shit down and all you've got left is like your generic characters and the arenas that you've built, there's bound to be a lot of those people that are like, oh, I thought you were making an ECW game, I'm out. Not to mention the animation, the Falcon Arrow animation is great. They managed to mimic the animation 1-to-1 from No Mercy. Congratulations, it looks fantastic. The grapple animation looks awful. Granted, it's a game in early development, but everything that we've seen is they're working on everything else rather than the actual gameplay. And when you're a game that has just revealed itself to be a thing in development, and the day AEW Fight Forever footage goes up, you shit on it, and then you argue with people who come into your mentions and claim that, like, well, SmackDown's not a wrestling game, it's a fighting game in a wrestling ring. Def Jam, a game that uses the exact same engine as No Mercy, in a better optimized version of it too, is a fighting game in a wrestling ring. You really show your ass and you betray any lack of knowledge that you would have. And I know I just used betray in an incorrect manner. I don't care. I felt bad for signal boosting this game after that because it is not a good look to take shots at everything else that's released when you've got screenshots and a move animation video and that's it. I saw their blurb about the career mode where like you start as a wrestler in the 80s and there's a couple of territories you can go to, and then once you finish that you can do like any other decade you want. That's great. I would probably make sure the game is functional and running and has a bunch of animations and is actually like a video game before. Like, I don't need to see your fucking design document. I'd rather just see some progress and some gameplay. They've shown minimal of either of those things in any sort of meaningful manner. And I will also say I want that game to be good because more good wrestling games means I just have more shit to do in my limited amount of free time at this point anyway. Every update from them is so smarmy and for no reason. Like, you've shipped nothing. You should be asking people for support instead of being like, oh, 2K22 hits different, but our game hits home. What fucking game? As far as I've seen, you've got an ECW arena creation simulator. That's like it. And you've got character models that are gonna have Jerry McDevitt or whoever their fucking head of legal is knocking on your door. Like, show some actual progress with the gameplay. I don't give a fuck that I can make a shitty looking Taz in your game or a shitty looking Rob Van Dam. I don't care that you have an image importer or a paint tool in your game. Those are great. I'd like to know that this game is going to be a functional version of what it is you're trying to sell. And with what we've seen, I have zero reason to believe it's ever going to be that way. And I'm not the only person. There are a lot of people that have seen that Twitter that have flat out been like, that game's never coming out. And I'd love to be wrong about that, but everything I've seen right now, and I think you were the one that said this, they're following like the early PWX marketing to a T.
Yeah, exactly. Advertising yourself as the new No Mercy. As Dave brought up last week, like with PWX, he talked about it. Like, sometimes they would get caught up. We can add this, we can add that, we can add this, we can do this. The Ultra Pro account was like, I'm having so much fun, putting RVD into this game in the ECW arenas. You're getting caught up on things that don't matter. You can't put
Right.
in RVD in your final product. You can't put in ACW. That's going to get the attention of people that you don't want attention from. So stop doing it. I said it last week. I said when we saw the menus, I said it's good to see them focusing on their own thing, and now it's back to ECW again, and I just don't understand the purpose of it.
It's because it's the only thing they've got that'll drive engagement, I think.
Did you
But
notice too in the video that the 1 2 3 the ref sounds were from Revenge?
I thought they sounded familiar. Yeah,
Yeah.
you probably can't do that. But then again, Retromania has the grunts from fucking Royal Rumble for the Sega Genesis, so
Sometimes that stuff flies under the radar, but when Sin Sofia is an existing company, I wouldn't do that. I will say like the quick footage that they showed, it was pretty crazy how close they got to No Mercy. I felt like the lighting and everything. I had someone message me, but I did send a tweet to them that was like, I can't follow you down this dark path, and someone was like, well, what do you mean by that? The whole thing that I just mentioned, stating that they're the new No Mercy. We've seen this all before, and it's not helping them in any way.
no, I and Dave even kind of jokingly took responsibility last week for being the original,
The
like,
original, yeah,
making an indie game. It's going to be like No Mercy. If you were making a game, and this goes to any indie game developer, and again, all due respects to Dave, shout out to him for doing the interview last week. You can look at that first like 5 years of PWX, and that's just like, this is what you don't do in
exactly.
terms of like marketing. And Dave even fucking admitted that last week, so hopefully he doesn't get mad at me for saying it. But I really try to be optimistic with Ultra Pro. There's some of the stuff they've shown that looks cool, but when you're showing like pink tank top, black trunks, you're clearly engagement farming, and you should be focusing on the actual wrestling and making sure that works before you ever touch create a wrestler, I would think, especially when you're a small dev team.
Someone also said to me, and it's a good point, like they said, I don't know why they would want to copy the Aki style, as closely as they are. If you think about something like Fight Forever, that feels like the evolution of the Aki engine. And
Right.
UPW is pretty much they want to be No Mercy to the fault, right? So you've got graphics that are reminiscent of N64, and somebody asked me like, why would you want it? Why wouldn't you evolve yourself instead of doing something that came out years and years ago? It sort of reminds me of. Did you see that game that was shown off recently? That's a lot like GoldenEye, but it's not GoldenEye. It's a different name.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I thought like I looked at that and I was like, that looks pretty cool. And then I saw, comments from people like, well, it's 2022. GoldenEye was a great game, but if I want to play GoldenEye, I'll play GoldenEye. If I want to play an advanced version of GoldenEye, I'll play the HD re-up or whatever it is. Why would I play this game? And I guess it's sort of the
I
same
mean,
thing with UPW. Like, if you want to play No Mercy, you can play No Mercy. If you want to play something that reminds you of No Mercy but is more updated, then you're going to play Fight Forever, or hopefully PWX or whatever the case may be. But UPW, is going and it's going for something that looks like it was released on the N64.
it I'd say it looks more like an early PS2 game
Right?
because the
Yeah,
way the character models look so much like Def Jam, it's ridiculous.
yeah. I guess not exactly N64 because it's not as choppy as like the N64 looked. But it's not something that's meaning I would say to evolve the Aki engine from what we've seen. More like be like an unreleased game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's Fight Forever has cartoony character models, but it also looks somewhat like a modern game.
Yeah,
UPW looks like also UPW looks like the 2006 PWX prototype.
yeah, I could see that.
And that's in 2022, that's not a compliment.
No.
It's not. Moving on, WrestleQuest, that cool little like pixel art turn-based RPG, has a release date. It's May of next year. This game I keep forgetting exists, but it looks really fucking cool.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw the trailer, but I think they mentioned like over 20 licensed wrestlers in it. I know they've got like Andre the Giant, Jeff Jarrett, Roddy Savage is in it, Legion of Doom, Jake the Snake. There was a clip of like Andre the Giant lifting up the entire ring and looks like he was throwing it.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I haven't seen the new trailer yet. I've been meaning to since I saw the tweet about the release date a day or two ago. That game from the first trailer I saw, I thought looked super promising. And also, goddamn, it must be really easy to license people through CMG brands.
Oh hell yeah, because Roddy Savage is like all over the place now. So
So is Andre, so is Piper, it feels
yep.
like. Like Davey Boy Smith is kind of getting there, and I'm happy about that because we went for years where like the only chance you had of seeing anything with Davey Boy is when the Fed decided they wanted to put something out with him. This game looks super cool. I'm watching the 30-second trailer from a couple of days ago now. It says 30 now
Oh,
in
does it?
terms of
Okay.
legends. Those sprites are all so freaking cool looking. Andre's fucking thing where he picks the ring up is called the Scoop Slam. That's cute. Yeah, that looks really cool.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I've been excited
I
for it for a while now.
yeah, I'm all over this. And also like the Legends roster they have is like that's pretty much targeted specifically towards my tastes. And speaking of Legends rosters and the Fed and all the things that come with that, Mike Straw was asked about WWE 2K23 news recently and said it should be coming very soon, which I took to mean probably Survivor Series because if you remember, they debuted that hit list trailer the week of Survivor Series last year, and I think if Fight Forever is dropping any sort of substantial update on Full Gear, they might. Not that the Fed feels. If you're 2K, you probably don't earnestly care about Fight Forever because you've got your user base, but they might feel compelled to be like, well, we were going to reveal the trailer for this game anyway. Might as well do it on Survivor Series because that's a big show. But I took it to mean Survivor Series week. We might be getting our first look at 2K23, which is cool for everybody that's interested in a sequel to 2K22.
It
Not
seems
me
like
though.
they're definitely moving over to 23 because they're shutting down like the My faction. Did you see the not shutting it down, but like they're finished releasing updates. Did you see like the latest updates they added to that?
The 99 overall Steve Austin card that I saw everybody going, oh yeah, no, this 100% means they're done with this mode.
Yeah, and they also added like Andre the Giant with an afro. They put in Eddie Guerrero with LWO t-shirt. They put in Deacon Batista, which is a funny one.
Why would you not put that shit in exhibition? I would reinstall the game for that, bro.
Yeah, it makes too much sense. I don't know if you saw it too, but like people have been uploading creations now, and they found a way to make them alternate attires for in-game wrestlers.
So
So,
does that mean I can get like can I have '05 Randy Orton then?
yeah, like for instance, like people have put up Edge with it not using the in-game model. That's not like a superstar threads thing or like editing the existing wrestler. They've uploaded an Edge completely brand new with a new face and everything. Like they've created their own Edge, but you can add it as an alt attire for the Edge that's in the game, so it has its commentary and everything.
And they haven't done anything to fuck that over.
I don't think 2K has said anything about it yet. No.
Okay, because I remember when people figured out a way to kind of finagle my faction and my career or whatever they're called.
Yeah.
Now, guys in like 2K dropped the hammer pretty quickly. Oh Jesus Christ, that Andre looks terrible.
Yep. Sure does. I'm sure like
Oh my God, what did they do to my boy?
they'll put a kibosh on that before they're finished with the game. I'm sure, but for right now, you can do that.
You know what's really crazy? The body on that Andre is accurate as all hell. It's just the face that looks bad.
Yeah, it's not great.
Like we're at the point where they're not making a super jacked Andre the Giant anymore. They've kind of got how his torso looked down, which is nice. It's just they need to fix the fucking Blanca hair and make him actually look like the big guy. God, that Andre is the only character in that pack that I fucking care about at all.
The
Because like, oh no, wait, actually, Deacon Batista, that's interesting.
That's such a weird one. I mean, you can make him Leviathan if you want.
Does he have like if you take the gimmick off him? Does he have Does he have like all the extra tattoos, or is it just like? Oh no, he's like normal. Okay, well, that's yeah. It's a shame you have to do a fucking workaround to be able to get these characters that should just be in the game but
Yeah, I hate my faction.
God love them.
I spent all of 5 minutes playing that and never touched it again.
I've got zero desire to touch that mode. Fuck that shit.
Yeah, it's not fun.
That's
There's so much cool stuff in there that's stored away. It's bullshit.
yeah, and I don't want to give them money to open packs. Like I don't like Madden Ultimate Team, and I don't like the idea of it being in a wrestling game either. And I know, and you know, and everybody listening to this knows, this mode's only getting expanded on in the future.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's only going to become more microtransaction heavy in the future. I'm almost certain of this. Those microtransactions are coming. They snuck them in this year, and we're like, you don't have to pay. You can just grind it out. You can just grind it out in my faction. Yeah, see how the fuck that works next year. Give me a break. Now, having said that, if anybody from 2K is listening to this, and they're not, but if they were, you got me with the NWO for Life edition this year. If you want to do like, I don't fucking know, like a Saturday Night's Main Event edition with a bunch of mid-'80s WWF guys next year, I can be co-opted. Just throwing that out there.
It'll be like
anyway,
Outback Jack and Aaron Mike Sharp.
Oh my god, bro! If they dropped Outback Jack for that game, I'm pre-ordering day one, and I'm taking back every bad thing I've ever said about that series. I was just going for like Hulk, Savage, Piper, Tito, fucking Paul Orndorff, but no, you look at me Outback Jack, goddamn.
Has Tito ever been in a wrestling game?
Legends of Wrestling.
Yeah, okay. WWE, has he been in anything?
That's a fucking excellent question. I feel like he's been in a game as El Matador.
I'm gonna check now because I don't know.
Yeah, I gotta look this up now. Oh, he's in Legends of WrestleMania.
Oh, is he? Oh, okay.
According to his IMDb, he is.
That's crazy because he's someone that you really associate with, 80s, early 90s WWF, and you'd think he'd be a legend in some of these games, and he's not anywhere to be found.
Okay, so he actually might not be in that game. He might have just appeared in like, yeah. So I don't know why IMDb just fucking lied to me live on the air.
Even when it comes to like action figures, I think he's only had one Mattel figure.
Yeah, have you ever heard the reason for why he's probably only had the one Mattel figure?
Didn't sell well?
Oh, yeah, well, there's a reason it didn't sell well. He was originally planned to be one per case, right? And then Hulk Hogan said a word that you probably shouldn't say, but he said it a whole bunch of times. And so they removed Hulk Hogan from that set, and the Hulk Hogan figures that were going to be in those cases were replaced with Tito Santana. So if you went to a Target with that Hall of Fame series, for like a year, maybe two in some areas, afterwards, that's why you saw Tito Santana just sitting there on the shelf begging you to buy him.
I never saw him sitting on the shelf. I would have.
I had so many friends who live near Targets who were like, "Oh, Tito's rotting at my Target," and I'm like, "Is he on clearance? Yeah, he's $8. Buy me one, motherfucker!"
Hell yeah!
It's Tito Santana.
I want a Tito.
I still can't believe they whiffed as badly as they did on Rick Martel when they had access to him. Like, we're gonna do 1992 model Martel, and we're never gonna do another figure of him. And now, I would believe it if somebody told me he signed on with Power Time, but we'll save figure talk for later. There is one more piece of current wrestling video game news, and that's at Basement Galaxy, or Virtual Basement. They made a tweet asking, or posted a tweet, or tweeted. You can use all of those phrases. They all mean the same thing. Asking what independent promotions that people wanted to see them work with, and I don't follow independent wrestling closely enough to have a strong opinion on this. Is there any indie promotions you want to see them work with?
No. The one that
Okay. Well,
the one that
goddamn.
the one that comes to my mind that just gets brought up a lot that I don't really want to see them work with would be GCW, but like,
Oh Christ, no.
yeah, I mean, why? I guess is my question.
Yeah, no.
If you have the ability to sign independent wrestlers under your own brand, then I don't really see the point in working with independent promotions.
Me fucking either. And with that said, we've got like 10 years of wrestling games to get through, and I'm going to do my best to not talk at length about a lot of them, but I've also tried not to talk at length about a lot of things on the previous episodes, and we've seen how well that works out.
That's true. Let's
So,
hope this isn't the longest episode yet because I don't want to go 4 hours today. So no one's gonna make it to
fuck
the end if
me
we
either,
do.
man. Yeah, no. So, kick it off. WrestleMania X8 comes out in the summer of 2002. It is technically a WWE game, but if you load it up, you will not see that logo anywhere. Even on the Player's Choice version, it's still WWF, I've been told. Uh, we talked a little bit with Dave Wisnowski about this last week. This game famously had a super negative reaction from the people that thought it was going to be exactly like No Mercy because Ukes in part told them it was going to be. I think if you wanted to play a SmackDown game that had a sensible reversal system, good graphics, great arenas, and a pretty sweet little roster, this is probably the definitive one until Here Comes the Pain comes out for me. Or actually, no, it's the definitive one for like 4.5 months until Shut Your Mouth comes out, but still.
I think
Best Hell in a Cell match ever.
in regards to like, it wasn't just a big deal because it was the Aki engine as well. Just because of that, I mean, sorry. It was also a big deal because this was post Invasion, and it was the WWE debut, games debut of people like Booker T, RVD, Hurricane, and Lance Storm. Not all the names from the Invasion, obviously, but to have a few names, that was a big deal at the time. Also, it
And
was
also the
NWO.
NWO.
Yeah, so you had Hogan and Flair, where that was their first game since Royal Rumble. And as you just said, NWO, you had Kevin Nash back and Scott Hall, who obviously was removed from some other games during that time, so he made it to this one. So those were big deals as well at the time.
Yeah, I remember the first match I played. I did not play as Rob Van Dam, who was the big new inclusion for me. I actually played as Scott Hall because I wanted to see what the Razor's Edge or the Outsider's Edge or the Insider's Edge, whatever the hell you want to call it. I wanted to see what that looked like in that game, and I thought that animation looked good.
It did because they always
I
looked
still think it looks good.
it always looked bad in the SmackDown games.
It's kind of why I'm happy he wasn't in SmackDown Shut Your Mouth because I didn't want to pin anybody after the shitty looking Razor's Edge animation they had in those games.
The game.
X8 also in career mode had Shawn Michaels ring gear.
Oh, does it?
Shawn Michaels ring gear, the kind of like late '90s, like the three hearts on the front gimmick.
Oh,
That's just
okay.
straight up in creator wrestler mode, and also they have the sweet chin music that ends up in all of the other games in the series, pretty much.
They
Or
also
no,
have
they had a
a
different one. They had a different one. I'm sorry, but like everything was there to create Shawn Michaels in that game too, because he returns that summer.
they have a mode called Battle of the Belt, which you fight for these fictional belts, and they have them on the screen, and they all look pretty good. Like they're all made up belts for that time period, and they're all right belt designs, are much better than what WWE has today, anyway.
Right, and can't you defend those against other people?
Yeah, you
Like if
can.
your
Yeah,
friend has a memory card?
yeah.
Yeah.
One drawback of the game is that it was the debut of the NWO, but they don't have the NWO theme song.
They
Booker
have
T
the
has
sweet
a
Jim Johnston ripoff.
Yeah, Booker T has the same. The Hardys don't have their theme song. Tajiri doesn't have his theme song. But on the plus side, Tajiri has his green shirt and white pants that he wore, which I thought was pretty funny.
And also, does Van Damme have one of a kind in that game, or is this the start
No,
of him having the invasion theme in the
yeah,
games?
I'm pretty sure he has the invasion theme. They also one thing they did bring from Aki was the ding sound for low blows.
Yeah, it's a very faint ding. It sounds kind of like the ding sound that's in the Fight Forever clip from Tokyo Game Show.
Yeah, and another thing I noticed about the game is the ringside area is absolutely huge. I'm sure that's probably for the Hell in the Cell, but it looks gigantic.
Yeah, and again, best Hell in a Cell match ever in a wrestling game. The cell is massive.
Yeah.
You can actually do stuff outside the ring. You Irish whip somebody into a cell piece like 3 times, it will break.
I
It's
can
a very fun little Hell in a Cell.
I obviously understand why people are disappointed in the game. I think I was too. I actually rented the GameCube to play it. As far as game modes go, there's no real, super advanced story mode or anything like that. It's fun for a few
No.
matches, but
The story mode is the classic beat everybody, win the title
yeah.
thing. And 3 and 4 way matches in that game are unbelievably frustrating. The AI is ridiculously unfair.
Yeah, maybe that's
But
one thing they pulled from Aki.
yeah, there's no handicap matches that I remember
Oh,
though.
thank God.
Thank fuck. But yeah, not a bad game. It's weird that it turns into the gameplay that it does because they're so different from one another in a lot of regards.
Yeah.
But for like a first effort with like a 9 or 10 month dev cycle, I think is what that game had. I don't see how you could fucking be mad at that game.
No, I mean, I get it at the time, you know, with the expectation of Aki, the new Aki game essentially, but looking back, it's not as bad as it was made out to be.
No, and then from there we got between point A and point B, we have Road to WrestleMania X8 on the Game Boy Advance. I'm going to talk about this game very briefly. Underrated game. The Game Boy wrestling games have a bad rep, and it's mostly deserved. This game had really cool little pre-rendered 3D models. It was still a 2D wrestling game, but like pre-rendered 3D models. They didn't have the full entrances like Road to Mania did with like the No Mercy kind of like Titantron and then the person on the stage. You just see them like walk to the ring. It's not like the most in-depth thing. You get a sweet MIDI version of Voodoo Child in that game,
Yeah,
though. So I can't say it's a bad game. The highlight of that game, I think, 2 of them. They ditched the momentum system that I praised so much in Mania 2000 and Road to Mania in favor of like just a straight up build your meter, hit your special. So that's cool. It makes the game a little bit easier to understand. And also, there is a Booker mode in that game where you're tasked with booking, I want to say it's the Big Five. And yeah, it's Rumble, SummerSlam, Survivor Series, King of the Ring, and WrestleMania is the last one. And you have to book a card that at the end makes Vince McMahon happy. And as a kid, I loved the shit out of that mode. I still love it whenever I load the ROM up now. I booked an incredibly stupid card for Mania, and my first try, Vince was like, "Oh, that was great." I think my main event was something like Test versus Bubba Dudley. No, it was no. I'm sorry. It was Test and Booker T. Which nothing screams WrestleMania main event like Test versus Booker T.
fighting over
But
shampoo, maybe.
it's it's a fun little game. I wish more people knew about the Game Boy Advance trilogy because they really are fun games. Mania X8 is probably my favorite of the 3, just because it's such a huge graphical upgrade and the gameplay is a little bit better just by virtue of the build your meter, hit your finish thing. And I really like the roster. You've got Rock and Hogan. You don't have Austin, unfortunately, but you've got Rock and Hogan, and you've got RVD and Kurt Angle, and it's like the only Game Boy Advance appearance of like Big Evil Undertaker instead of like American Badass like 2000 2001 Taker. You have short-haired Booger Red both on the cover and in the game. That's fucking cool.
Did
But yeah, very very fun little game.
did the previous game have a Royal Rumble match? Or was it
Yeah,
just in this one? Okay.
yeah, and that's a wild little match to play on a Game Boy.
If you're anywhere
They
close to
made
the
it work.
ropes, you're gonna get clotheslined over. Someone's gonna run at you and clothesline you over.
Yeah, yeah, but I give them all the props in the world for making that shit work on a Game Boy.
Yeah, it was neat.
And now the big one for O2. A lot of people's first PlayStation 2 game, or at least people that I know, it was mine. SmackDown Shut Your Mouth. I have to give the story about the day I got this game, and I'll do as quickly as I can. I was kind of indifferent to SmackDown Shut Your Mouth for a lot of its hype cycle because I had a GameCube with Mania X8, and I really liked how that game played. And then I saw the SmackDown countdown for Billy Kidman and told my mom, "Oh no, this year I have to get the PS2." That argument lasted like 3 days, and we went and put a PS2 on layaway, and it's like last day before Christmas break in fifth grade. They they bring us into a room, all the boys separated off from the girls, and we have sex ed with the gym teacher. And he shows us this video from like 1982 where they're explaining all of the stuff that all of us have already seen because it's 2002 and we have the internet. And it's just like I'd rather be shot in the head than deal with this. Especially it's the last day before Christmas break too. Like nobody wants to deal with this. And I go out and I get in the car and mom's like, "Well, how was your day?" And I'm like, "It was fucked up." That's what it was. It was fucked up. And out of nowhere, mom produces the case for SmackDown Shut Your Mouth, and she's like, "Yeah, it's already set up when you get in the door." And then I went to Movie Gallery and bought a 4-pack of PS1 memory cards, and learned that those don't work for the PS2. Great Christmas break. Great
Yeah,
game.
this is what Just Bring It should have been.
Yes.
Just Bring It, didn't feel that much different from the previous SmackDown's games. This one had the different visual style. We've brought this up before, but like my favorite thing about this game is the personality of the wrestlers. Hurricane's got his pose. Hogan walks differently than everyone else, or like at least in his default stance is different than everyone else. Goldberg and Brock shuffle their shoulders the whole time. Goldust does moves
We're
like,
talking about that's Here Comes the Pain, big dog.
oh no, it's this. It's definitely Shut Your Mouth.
Goldberg's in Goldberg's not in Shut Your Mouth. He's
Oh
in Here
shit,
Comes the
shit,
Pain.
you're right. Goldberg's not in this, but like Brock is, and it's the same thing. Like
Yeah.
he moves his shoulders. Goldust does an arm drag, and then rubs his hand over his chest. Everyone's got a personality. Everyone's got their signature moves, and they're animated in such a way that it feels like them. Which is something that Kenny Omega's brought up about Fight Forever, obviously. So that's my big thing about this game that I really love the most. Story mode is pretty cool. Season. It let you do the draft, and then you could like recreate moments like Rock versus Hogan. Hogan, by the way, actually has 3 songs in this game. He's got Voodoo Child, he's got Real American, and then the NWO theme as well. So yeah, I think this game in some cases is it's a bit weird to say it's forgotten. Maybe a bit underrated because of Here Comes the Pain. People seem to forget Shut Your Mouth sometimes, but I really enjoy it.
Yeah, it's a game that I think is very important for the progression of the SmackDown series. Because a lot of the stuff that's introduced in story mode there, like the shop, the the ability to talk directly with the GM, the way the story progresses differently depending on what you actually do or who you're playing as, even at the start. I think Here Comes the Pain's a lot different if this game doesn't introduce all of that. I think I think Here Comes the Pain's the reason it gets forgotten because it's the game before the big one.
Yeah,
But this game's got so much going for it. I love the graphic style, the way they changed it from looking just like SmackDown 2 to like this is what a PlayStation 2 wrestling game looks like.
exactly. Yeah,
Like I'll always cite like Rock's character model in this game looks fucking incredible. There's so many unlockable attires for so many. I think RVD has like 3 attires in this game that you unlock just by playing through story mode a bunch of times. And I loved the NWO angle because I played through season mode as Brock Lesnar because obviously I did. So having Brock and Hogan is the big thing. After seeing how that match went in real life on SmackDown, that was a lot of fun. I I really liked playing through and getting the hair versus hair storyline with Kurt Angle, which obviously happened that year. They have like a mock Survivor Series '01 winner takes all storyline. It's such a fun game. That's the first SmackDown game that has the big Hell in a Cell because it was just a cage with a roof in the previous 2 games. And it's also the second to last SmackDown game with like the really insane backstage areas because you do have WWE New York or the World or whatever it was called, and there's the big valve and not valve, the big tank in the back. You Irish whip somebody into it, they go flying. Like famously happens in an RVD Chris Jericho clip in the game's commercial. I can't say enough good things about the game, and maybe I'm biased because it was my first PS2 game, but I've dumped a shit ton of hours into that game, and it is fantastic.
yeah, I definitely recommend it for anyone that's just heard about Here Comes the Pain. Maybe has passed over Shut Your Mouth. Give it a try. It's really good.
especially if you like late 01 and early 02 WWE. And then I think,
And
what is it, almost a year later, we get into the multi-platform era is in full swing because there's a game for the GameCube, one for the Xbox, and one for the PlayStation 2. I
that's
think
right,
in
yeah.
that order as well.
Next game is Crush Hour.
Oh, that's right. I don't know why I thought Crush Hour came out towards the end of it. No, that doesn't make any sense. It came out in 5th grade. Yeah. This game is insane. It's WWE Twisted Metal.
The Twisty
It is.
Rockets.
I've seen a lot of shit talked, and we talked about Betrayal a bit on the previous look at the history of this company's games. But I've seen so much shit over the years about how bad Crush Hour was and it didn't need to exist. It is just a stupid side game ripping off like a very popular game from a few years earlier with the WWE IP. It is hurting nobody. This took no fucking money from SmackDown or Mania 19 or Raw 2. And also, when Brock Lesnar blows something up in that game, whether you're playing as him or the AI is controlling him, all of his audio stuff is just from the SmackDown Shut Your Mouth commercial.
I could have used more of
I
these
thoroughly
games, to be
enjoyed.
honest.
The thing about it is, if these games existed now, they'd be shitty free to play mobile games.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what they are now. But
Yeah,
back in the day, like WWE as a different genre, hell yeah, I would have played that.
yeah.
WWE
I
Tennis,
loved the
sure.
shit out of this game.
Yeah.
I wish this game got a sequel, but also like Twisted Metal went into like another dark age right after Black came out, so
Do you remember
market might not
the
have been there.
storyline?
Yeah, WWE got kicked off of TV or whatever,
It got
and
its own
fucking
network.
huh.
And then there was like Cooking with Kane and stuff like that.
I was about to say I'm still waiting for that on Peacock, though maybe I don't want to see that show now because Glenn Jacobs is an asshole.
Yeah, he's a piece of shit.
Yeah, fuck you, Kane. Not Kane,
WrestleMania?
Glenn Jacobs. He's not Kane.
No, he's not. It's a different person. But they both hurt Katie Vick in ways that we can't speak about. Um, WrestleMania 19.
I love this game. I know you're not really big on like the GameCube WWE games for this era. Out of all of them, this one actually might be my favorite because it's got the bright, cartoony, high contrast character models that look honestly kind of absurd. I've always loved how Goldberg looks in this game. I've always loved how Brock looks in this game. Hogan, Rock, Austin, Undertaker. I still remember seeing the first gameplay footage of this game of Undertaker and Rey Mysterio, and my cousin and I going ape shit over it because like the graphics looked so cool. They clearly demonstrated tap for weak, hold for strong, and blood. Seeing the Undertaker bleed where it was like a little trickle under his bandana, that was so cool. And they talked about how cool the revenge mode was going to be. And I know there's a lot of motherfuckers out there that don't like revenge mode, but I'm seeing a lot of people. The revenge mode respect gang is in full force now because I see a lot of people talking about how much they love that mode. The one negative thing I'm going to say about the mode is it screwed us out of having like a full selection of arenas because all we have in 19 is Raw, SmackDown, Rumble, SummerSlam, and Mania. I would have really liked more arenas at the expense of the big crazy revenge mode stuff. But that game is insanely fun. Great roster too.
This is
Very weird UI though.
this is the one that I didn't actually mind. I would think
Really?
when it comes to visual style, it's the one that's closest to Aki.
Yeah,
Obviously
I
the
agree.
the Day of Reckoning games went for a more realistic graphics, and X8 really looks like a SmackDown game. But yeah, this is the one that I probably enjoyed the most. I mean, it had Goldberg on it. I love playing as Goldberg in any game. So,
He's very fun to play as,
oh yeah,
except when you're playing as him in the modern WWE games because none of his stuff looks like it has any sort of impact.
no, but around this period, like when he made his debut, when they put him in all these games, he was always pretty fun.
Yeah, he was my favorite guy to use in like Raw 2. This game though, Creator Wrestler mode's a lot of fun. Revenge mode is stupid, but it's fun. The actual gameplay I enjoy. Again, you have the Hell in a Cell match from the previous game. The ladder matches in these games I didn't really mind that much either, but I'm not a huge, I think I said this on the WWF games video, I'm not a huge gimmick match fan because it's hard to convey the point of the gimmick match in a video game form. It's like when you play a cage match with your action figures, you can't really convey what a cage match is supposed to be. You probably actually would have a better time you'd have an easier time doing it with action figures than with a
You
video
would with
game
games, yeah,
because
because you're restricted.
yeah, yeah, you can do whatever you want with your action figures. A video game just kind of leaves you with your you have a sandbox, but how big that sandbox is ultimately comes up to the developer. But yeah, 19's a good game, and then we get to Raw 2, and well,
Which I mean, Raw 2, there's really two things I could say about this game that I liked, and that was basically it. Lenny Hart from Pride Fighting Championships does the ring entrances along with Howard Finkel. And then the second thing I liked was the creation suite. The create an entrance was pretty cool. You could have all sorts of effects and pyro, and this is when you could put in your own music. You could edit the outfits of the default wrestlers, so that was interesting. But that's really all I have to say about this game.
yeah, the creation suite was wild. I remember going in and basically making Hulk Hogan like classic Hulk Hogan with Real American as his theme. I remember going through and looking at like the move sets, and Brock Lesnar has like an avalanche F5 in that game. I've and it's literally just the F5 animation he has normally, but off the top rope.
That sounds
So
crazy.
weird. Yeah, and you could F5 people off the cell in that game. Like that's a Hell in a Cell finisher.
That's a cool thing.
Yeah, that
It's just a shame it's no fun to play.
yeah, the gameplay, the AI in that game is brutal. There's a reversal system, but it doesn't seem to really work a whole lot.
No.
Gigantic roster though. I believe the only WWE game appearance of like Jamie Noble was that game. That game had fucking everybody pretty much. It was
Yeah,
insanely deep roster.
great roster, great look, but holy shit, does that game suck?
The season mode was fun though because you could have 4 people. You could drop crates on motherfuckers' heads and steal gimmicks out of their bag.
That's what I would do. I would just try to steal everything every show.
Yeah, it's yeah. The less said about Raw 2, the better. And I'm gonna say it right now. When we loop back around to the next Xbox wrestling game, I'm gonna tell you why that one's objectively the best of the three. But for now, we move on to SmackDown Here Comes the Pain, which is a lot like No Mercy in that like what do you say about it that adds anything meaningful to the 19-year like conversation about this game? It's the best SmackDown game.
I was just
Like,
talking about playing as Goldberg, and I'd accidentally said he was in the Shut Your Mouth, but he wasn't. He was in this game, and like holy shit, did they just get him correct? Like they were obviously watching Goldberg's matches in Old Japan because there's like one move he does where the opponent kicks him and then he lifts him up with a choke slam, and I'm pretty sure that was in the match of Taiyo Kea. There's the neck breaker that he used to beat Satoshi Kojima. He's so good in this game. Like the spear looks great, the jackhammer. He's got a backdrop driver, which looks insane. This is like the best Goldberg in any game, I think.
yeah, it's the most accurate. He's one of the few guys that you can look at that if you wanted to like if you had to pick a gameplay style to drop him into, that dude's built for SmackDown because it's like fast, high impact.
Yeah,
All of his moves look devastating in that game. And they got everybody right in that game. So many of the like mid card and up guys had so much of their move sets animated specifically for them. There's like fucking 7 different stunners in that game, and
so
they all look great.
I think the first game I played, I actually remember when me and my mom went to pick it up at AB Games, and they had it set up in the kiosk. And I think the first match I was Ultimo Dragon against Rey Mysterio, and just from the bat, like it was super cool to have Ultimo Dragon in a new game. They've got all those kicks and everything. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's
fantastic.
funny you mention Ultima being the first character you played as because he's the first guy I played as. Brief story. That game came out the day my mom came home from having her first knee replacement. And as you would do as a 12-year-old, I immediately came into the house, dropped my book bag, and put the game into my PS2 without, saying hi. So like I'm playing, and I have since apologized to my mom profusely for this, including that day, because once it clicked in my head, I felt like an asshole. But like I'm sitting there playing career mode. I just won the tag belts with Ultimo Dragon and the Undertaker, and I hear my mom from the living room like, "Hi, Bob," for like the 8th time, and I just go, "Mom, can you give me a minute? I'm playing as Ultimo Dragon, please." And like literally 15 minutes later, I went in like, "I'm sorry, like that was wrong. I'm sorry, Mom." And she was like, "How was your day at school?" And I was like, "Yeah, it was school. I'm gonna go back to playing SmackDown now." And she's like, "Yeah, I figured." And on the way home, the guy who picked me up was like a friend of my parents, and he was actually the one that went to Sam Goody and picked that game up for me. And on the way home, he's like, "Yeah, your mom sent me over there to get him, but I said, he doesn't need him. Just I'll take the money back, give it to his mom." And I'm like, "You did what? I'm sorry." Because that was the day the WWE Bloodbath Cage Matches DVD came out. He's like, "Oh yeah, I give the money back to your mom." And I'm sitting in the car like, no. But here's the thing, bud. Here's what we're gonna do. You're gonna take me to the house. I'm gonna get the money, and I'm gonna go get that freaking game because I've been waiting for that game. And he's like, "No, you don't need it. You got a bunch of wrestling games anyway." I'm like, "Buddy, you don't understand me. That game's got the Road Warriors and Goldberg. It's got the Road Warriors. I gotta play it." And he was like, "Yeah, I'm just kidding. It's waiting on the table for you." And I was
No.
like, "You narrowly escaped death today, my friend."
Yeah, it was fantastic. I don't know if you remember this, but like you probably do, but um the arenas in the game. So the SmackDown arena was based on it used to be the old Trump Plaza where they had WrestleMania 4 and 5.
Yeah, Boardwalk Hall.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Like you can see like the top of the building, it's just like that. When you have like this video is like the credits video, you can see that the clips in it are from SmackDown that was at that arena, so you can see it's based on the same one. I think Raw was based on Madison Square Garden. It was a really nice detail at that time.
yeah. They had like A and B. Wasn't it like A
Yeah,
was based on one and B was based on the other?
I think so. Yeah.
I want to say that was the thing. I've always loved like 0203 was when I was really going hard with like the VHS tapes, like movie gallery and stuff.
Hmm.
So like the first time I see the crowd shot, I'm like, "That's the fucking Mania 4 building." That was so cool. It also should be noted, this game marks another significant turning point in the series in that it is the first to feature Legends. And the day this game came out, the Showdown Legends of Wrestling website launched with Ultimate Warrior, who, along with Hulk Hogan, was famously removed from this game
Yes.
very late in development. Scott J, who has terrible wrestling opinions but has done a lot of cool work with restoring lost content, now I believe has the build with Hogan and Warrior, and eventually we'll be doing a Here Comes the Pain Definitive Edition with them back in.
For those who want to see Hogan and Warrior in the game, I think there's been like footage released since then. Maybe I can't remember, but
There's footage from like '03 of Warrior and
yeah,
Rock, I think it is, on top of a Hell in a Cell. I remember seeing that at the time.
from
And
E3,
Warrior
right?
clearly looks like, was it E3? I
I
just
think it
I just know
was.
that like the video that's up on YouTube now has like a really homophobic description, so maybe just
Oh,
prepare yourself for that if you look it up.
that's horrible.
But it looks like fucking like 92 or 96 Warrior, just because it's from the very like butthole quality video, it looks like a more detailed attire. And when I think of like super detailed Warrior gear, it's like 92 and 96.
Yeah, I think it was like 92 Warrior. I think there's Hogan, like Hogan's entrance from around that time as well, from the same source as the Warrior video, I think.
I don't think I've ever seen Hogan's entrance. I do know that 80s Hogan was going to have like a fucking 98 overall, though.
Jesus. Wasn't there, but they were gonna have modern Hogan too, right?
Yeah, he was going to have like an 86 or an 88 overall.
That was in magazines, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I remembered it from, yeah.
I, man, have you ever played story mode and gotten to like the WWE title tournament at WrestleMania and you had all the legends in the game? Have you ever experienced this phenomenon? Because I've done this several times. It will
No.
always be, I play as Brock Lesnar and I'm on SmackDown. The other motherfuckers in the tournament are always Kurt Angle, Nikolai Volkov, whose name is spelled incorrectly, and the Iron Sheik.
Oh, God.
And I think Iron Sheik's name is spelled incorrectly in the game too.
I'm actually gonna play the story mode because I've got my PS2 set up now, so if I can find a memory card, but
It's a humdinger of a story. It's my favorite story mode.
yeah, it's great.
I remember playing the Raw path and like just tanking matches with Goldberg to see what happened, and I beat the fuck out of Bischoff in a cage match of Bad Blood. And I was like, yeah, I never want to hear anybody say this game isn't great.
The only thing, like, the problem, the only, it's not even a huge issue or anything, but the sheen they put on the wrestlers made them look like action figures a bit. It's always kind of
It is
distracting.
it is weird. Yeah, I'm of two minds because I like it because it gives the game like a unique look,
Mm-hmm.
but it also does look a little weird
Yeah, but
and robs some of the models of detail.
such
Yeah.
a minor thing though. Like, still a fantastic game.
Yeah, I can't imagine anybody listening to this has not played SmackDown Here Comes the Pain, but if
Yeah,
for some reason you haven't, you absolutely need to. It is as good as the SmackDown gameplay style ever got, because the
yeah,
only place it went after this, as we're about to get into, was not good. But with the passage of another year, brings us another GameCube WWE game, which was Day of Reckoning. I was actually sick the day this game came out. Sam Goody did not have my copy, but Walmart had one, so we went and got it. And I remember beating that game like a couple of days later, and a friend of mine who I just became friends with him was at my house, and I'm playing the Iron Man match against the Undertaker because I opted to go to SmackDown and join the new ministry with Charlie Haas, Big Show, and Booker T. And I'm just sitting there like calling the Undertaker every absurd name that I could think of. And like for years he cited like watching me just call the Undertaker a bitch repeatedly. I think I called him a yeehaw ass honky a couple of times too because he's from Texas. He
damn.
cited that. He's like, yeah, I knew you were cool because you had all these different insults for the Undertaker, and I was like, yeah, well, should have heard me the night of Mania 21, buddy. I said a lot of things about the Undertaker that I didn't necessarily mean in 2005, but if I said them now, I absolutely would. Um, this is where they kind of break from trying to be a lot like they have the foundation, tap for weak, hold for strong, but they also add in like the button mash body slams on like super heavyweights. The momentum shift comes into factor in this game. This is the game where instead of just having the contextual limb selling, which we should have mentioned, SmackDown Here Comes the Pain also introduces blood and limb damage into the SmackDown games after it's brought back in Mania 19. This game has the SmackDown body damage tracker, as well as like your wrestler holding whatever it is that's injured. The momentum shift is basically one time per match when you're in danger. You press A and B, and if you're a heel like Ric Flair, you'll punch the other guy in the balls and you'll swap momentum with them. So if they have red momentum, you will immediately be like one move away from having a finisher. It is a very, very cool mechanic, but the AI had a tendency of abusing this at the absolute worst fucking moments.
Yeah,
It's
I don't have
I'm assuming you've also gone dead silent because you have nothing to say about
I
this
don't
game. I'm
really have
sorry.
much to say about Day of Reckoning. Yeah, maybe it's just the case I didn't spend so much time with them because I never owned a GameCube, but yeah, I'm not really a fan of the Day of Reckoning games. And everyone else is like, "Are you crazy?" And I'm like, "I guess so," because I just don't get them.
I I will say I liked the graphics. There's like one specific instance in Kane's entrance where if you paused the video, it's like right after he does the fire gimmick, the camera zooms in on his face from the floor, and if you paused that video and showed it to somebody, it looked like just a shot from Monday Night Raw missing the WWE logo in the lower left hand corner. Like the graphics were great. I will say, however, I don't understand why Chris Benoit has black wrist tape in the menus but white wrist tape in the actual game. If
Didn't
somebody could explain that to me, that would be fantastic.
Was there like one occasion where he even had white wrist tape in that period? I don't think so.
I don't remember ever seeing where white wrist tape like post WCW.
Didn't like Edge not have any wrist tape at all?
Maybe this is gonna shock you. I didn't really play as Edge in that game. The story mode is wild because they give you the option to go to SmackDown, but really you're supposed to go to Raw and join Evolution. You create a character. This is the
You're
first game that has
you're basically Mark Jindrak then.
yeah. You create a character and you go through developmental, which in the Day of Reckoning strat guide actually says OVW. I'm guessing somebody kiboshed something somewhere along the line. Instead of the OVW arena, it is the WWE House Show arena. You'll fight your way through some generic guys, and then in a weird moment of like them trying to have it both ways, like this is like a wrestling game, but also we're gonna let you know a little bit. They talk about how Matt Hardy's injured, and before he goes back to TV, he needs to rehab his leg. So have a match with him, work his leg over, see where he's at. That kind of stuff, which is cool. You'll then go up to Sunday Night Heat, and then you'll get choice to go to Raw or SmackDown. If you go to Raw, you join Evolution. You go to SmackDown, you join the new ministry, which is The Undertaker, Charlie Haas, Booker T, Big Show, and you.
What a stable.
Really, the story is the exact same on either brand, so there's legitimately no reason to ever replay this. Also, you unlock all of the stuff like the first time through, like all the legends that are in the game, which include Brutus Beefcake, Roddy Piper, Greg the Hammer Valentine, Andre the Giant, and Bret the Hitman Hart. I believe that is the entire roster. You'll unlock all of that stuff the first playthrough, so you have no reason to experience Evolution if you've played as the new ministry, and there's no reason to experience the new ministry if you've played through the Evolution path. They're the exact same story. It culminates at WrestleMania in an Iron Man match against either Triple H or The Undertaker. I liked the story mode a little bit just because of how absurd the new ministry was, and I liked the OVW bit because it tried not to like smarten me up in a way, but also like I had started reading the Observer at that point. So like this kind of felt like they were inching towards like, we're gonna talk to our audience like they're not fucking stupid in the video games. And then of course that goes out the window with SmackDown versus Raw, which is the segue. I also skipped school the day SmackDown versus Raw came out. I was not sick until I played that game, and then I became violently ill. What the fuck did they do to SmackDown Here Comes the Pain?
I don't know. They added mini games. They added a bunch of bad songs like "I'm the Bone Cracker," and they put in commentary. And they have the commentary and the songs playing at the same time, and the songs have lyrics in them, which is very distracting.
It is disorienting, yeah.
Yeah. I spent a little bit of time with this last night.
You poor bastard.
Well, I mean, I didn't find it that much different from. I mean, the gameplay isn't that much different from Here Comes the Pain, I thought, but there's a lot of changes that just felt unnecessary. Like the mini games, I didn't feel really added anything to it. They changed the
No, they
camera
take
angle.
you out of it's the camera angle is a big point of contention with me. They
Yeah.
wanted to go more broadcast, which that's well, I don't give a fuck. The giant ass HUD that in like multi-man matches, congrats, you're not gonna see anything.
Yeah, the
Drove me
HUD's not
nuts.
great.
Dropping down to 3 finishers pissed me off. The babyface heel system, which was so slanted towards wrestling as a babyface that like wrestling as a heel should never have been an option. And it gets even worse in SVR 6 when they integrate the babyface and heel stuff into like momentum, like generally. I didn't like the career mode. I thought the storylines all sucked. I thought the voice acting was bad. I thought the graphics look great. Like that is a nice looking wrestling game for 2004. But I didn't like that it shared the same soundtrack for the most part with DOR.
Yeah, I hated that. Absolutely.
I don't like the commentary. The one thing I'll say is really cool though is they brought back Create a Pay-Per-View, and in Create a Pay-Per-View mode, it'll do like SmackDown Here Comes the Pain in career mode. There would be like hype videos at the beginning of pay-per-views if you were in the main event, and it would do a hype video like Here Comes the Pain for your main event, whatever it was. I thought that was cool. I didn't like shit about the rest of the game. Create a Wrestler hadn't moved forward in any real meaningful manner. They added Create a Belt, but I remember it being kind of lame. Like you had to spend in-game currency on the belt, which the Legends roster was wild because you get the Road Warriors again. You get Brutus Beefcake. Bret the Hitman Hart makes his series debut in that game. I think Andre might be in that game too. I want to say Andre's in that game, and he's also in 06 and 07. They have the like babyface 92, 93 Undertaker in that game, but he has the same goddamn moveset as regular Undertaker, so what's the point?
Like, I think they just call him Legend Undertaker, right?
Or the Undertaker.
That might be it, yeah.
And then like regular versions just Undertaker, some stupid shit like that. I thought this game felt so undercooked. I thought they really relied in the marketing for the game through like IGN, PSM, all those outlets. The graphics were talked up a great deal as they should have been. The game was gorgeous. I thought them deciding all of a sudden we need to be like a real sports game and have a fucking Madden kickoff meter like chop sequence in the corner, or like the shove off at like the shove contest at the beginning of the match, or like press the button to throw the first strike. I thought all of that stuff was incredibly lame and detracted greatly from the gameplay. This is I think this is where I kind of became adamant that like the SmackDown series wasn't going to be good anymore, because this felt like you could never go back to Here Comes the Pain now. You've slowed the game down a little bit. You've taken the steps to make it look more like the broadcast. You're inching closer and closer to trying to be a real sports game, quote unquote. And you could feel the personality being sucked out of the gameplay at an alarming rate. And I was not a big fan.
That's what I was gonna say too. Like the lack of personality, you can feel a shift definitely. I think the next game on the list is WWE Survivor Series, which is the follow-up to Road to WrestleMania 18.
Very fun game. I won't tell the story in detail, but like the night I got this game, we had to go to Lima to Toys R Us. Instead of mom sending me in with the money, she went in with me, which meant my grandma was in the car by herself at 8 o'clock at night in Lima, Ohio. Yeah. Nothing bad ever happens on that. Like nobody ever got fucking mugged in the Toys R Us parking lot. But I do remember we were in line and I'm like, do you want to like just like I can pay? Like, give me the money. I'm paying for the game. Do you want to go fucking make sure grandma's all right? That'd be great. This game has a wonderful roster. You've got the Game Boy Advance return of like Benoit and Eddie Guerrero, because I believe both are in Road to WrestleMania. It's the Game Boy Advance trilogy debut of like Shawn Michaels, Randy Orton, John Cena. Deadman Undertaker's in the game. Obviously, Triple H is in the game, unfortunately. It is a very cool little roster. And it actually has a story mode. Basically, you're told like there's an emphasis on having competitive matches more so than just winning, which was another one of those like Day of Reckoning. Like, see, they understand. We fucking get it. It's a work. I never had competitive matches though. I just steamrolled people with Kane.
Yeah, when you start the story mode, it's like they want you to do every move available to you and matches with finishers and stuff like that.
It's the game never explains what it means by exciting matches, but the AI is also a lot harder than the Mania X8 AI was. I remember, and it just has put on a good match. But like, it's also one of those things like, that's what they're saying in the back, because I'm 13 and I'm stupid. And I love the MIDI version of Evolution's theme that Randy Orton has in that game.
The theme songs in these games are so good.
They are. They really fucking are. But yeah, it's a continuation gameplay wise. Still the same nice, like pre-rendered 3D graphics. Same fun little gameplay. Like I've seen so many people dunk on these games for not being as good as Fire Pro, and that's like shitting on Here Comes the Pain for not being as good as King of Colosseum 2. It makes no fucking sense. They're trying to do two different things. But yeah, Survivor Series, I was unbelievably excited because like we didn't get Road to Mania 19, so I lost out on the Game Boy Advance game with Brock Lesnar and Goldberg. But we got that game with that roster, and I had so much fun with it. It's a real shame that series didn't continue on the DS. More on that
Natsume is
later.
a bit of a underrated developer when it comes to wrestling games, when you consider the All Japan games as well.
Yeah, seriously, they I would say they made no bad games, because I like the Game Boy WWF games and I love the All Japan games. Even the All Japan game they developed for the Game Boy is fantastic. They did not miss.
But you know what did miss was WrestleMania 21.
Okay, but here's the thing. It's still gameplay wise, and this is the lowest hanging fruit. It is the best WWE game on the Xbox by a lot gameplay wise. Also graphically, also in terms of animations. But this game's plagued by the fact like the developer was running out of money. They basically closed immediately after this game comes out. This game took forever to get out. But I'll never forget the big article, and anybody that was reading Game Informer at the time remembers this. There was this big article about WrestleMania 21, and it was there's going to be mid-move reversals, which ended up being true. The best graphics ever in a wrestling game, which to that point, you know what I'll say? That game is the American equivalent of like All-Star Pro Wrestling in terms of graphics and animation. Because the first time I played All-Star Pro, that's what it reminded me of. Like aesthetically, like it is a beautiful fucking video game with really lifelike animations that you would not have seen in anything else. Unfortunately, because it was plagued by a kind of shitty development cycle where the developer was quickly running out of money, there's a lot of glitches in the game. Some of them are funny, like the ladder match glitch where like the belt like goes through the mat and you can't actually finish the match. That's hilarious. Shout outs to whoever gave that fucking glitch a window to happen. But I never thought the gameplay was bad. I had a lot of fun with that game. I actually got my cousin's Xbox from him in 2009, and he had that game, and I spent a decent amount of that summer playing that game. And I was like, if this game got a sequel and like, you know, a proper development window, we might have had a really good game. But all things being equal, they decided SmackDown only as a multi-plat game after 05, and we never did get a sequel. The career mode has the fucking lame create a wrestler, shitty voice acting. It does have Eric Bischoff saying he had to go to hell and back to get your opponent, and then out comes Andre the Giant.
Ugh, yeesh.
Yeah. I don't remember a lot about like a lot of the gimmick matches for Mania 21. I do need to play it again because I want to play like I want to play the ladder match to see if you actually can still win it if the belt goes through the mat.
I was just gonna say you were talking about like the developer. This was by Studio Gigante, right? I think they only made like
Tao
Tell
Fang in this
Tell.
game.
Yeah, and that the head of that was like John Tobias, right?
Yeah, so it was like another wrestling game made by a member of the Mortal Kombat team because Sal DeVita famously worked on Mania the arcade game and another game on this list we're going to talk about in a few minutes.
Yes.
And I thought like, oh, the studio's headed by a guy that worked on Mortal Kombat. This is going to be great. And I actually thought Tao Feng was like a perfectly fine little 3D fighting game. I only rented it like one time. But yeah, Mania 21 could have been a lot better, but when you look at the Xbox in terms of wrestling games, it may be the worst video game console ever.
I was gonna
Like
say,
your
yeah.
your best game is either Mania 21 or like one of the Legends of Wrestling games. Oof.
Or Def Jam, right?
Yeah, no, Fight for New York is on the Xbox. Vendetta for whatever reason isn't. Do you count Fight for New York as a wrestling game? Because that's more like a 3D fighting game.
I guess not. I mean, as you said, like the Xbox might have been the worst game, the worst console for wrestling games. Like nobody could figure that out for some reason.
Yeah, it's so weird. Like they couldn't. I mean, there's that Wild Rings game, but I've always heard that's less of a wrestling game and more of like a fucking just knock your opponent out kind of game. I guess. Do we talk about WWE Aftershock?
That's what's next on my list. I've never played this, so I don't know anything about it.
I haven't. I haven't either. I wanted to. I was obsessed with the idea of getting an N-Gage when I was a kid. Um, my mom repeatedly explained to me it's not like if I go and buy you a system, I have to pay a monthly fee on this because it's a phone. And I was like, but look at Tony Hawk. It looks just like the PlayStation. And I've always heard the N-Gage ports of Tony Hawk 1 and 2 are very good. I played a demo of one at the AT&T store here in my hometown. And I was like, yeah, this is just a PlayStation game on a smaller screen. But that's like one level. I didn't play, you know, like the downhill jam on that screen must have been a fucking nightmare.
I didn't. My main knowledge of the N-Gage comes from like watching X play and them always making fun of it with like Star Trek jokes.
Well,
N-Gage.
the WWE game, I've never played. I've seen a lot of footage of it. I was obsessed with the idea of a 3D portable wrestling game. I have no idea. I was a weird kid. And we didn't get a WWE game on the DS until 2007, which is a horrible game. So, like, this being the first 3D portable wrestling game, I was like, this has to be good. And then, like, I went on GameSpot's website and downloaded, like, clips of it, and I was like, well, it looks good graphically. I remember there being some animations that looked like they got access to the SmackDown animations. But the conventional wisdom about this game is be thankful you didn't have an N-Gage because this game is the drizzling shits. Moving on to a game that is not the drizzling shits, WWE Day of Reckoning 2, the summer of 2005. The return to the GameCube series of Hulk Hogan. He's in all but one of those games, which is the original Day of Reckoning. For my money, the best looking WWE game that we had ever gotten. And I think this game looks better graphically than SmackDown 06. The lighting is unfucking believable. The character models look great. Randy Orton, for some reason, does not have wrist tape, and that drives me nuts. However, you also have Kenzo Suzuki, and what I believe is his only WWE game appearance. I think this is the WWE game debut of Paul London, which
Yeah.
was a huge deal to me when I was 14. This is the first. This is the first game after Batista and John Cena are coronated as the champions, and both of them look great in this game. I've always been a huge fan of DOR2. I think the stamina system and how it ties into the submission system is brilliant. The story mode, however, can eat a bag of dicks. Once again, you create a character, but you don't get the attribute points to make your character like good, which is stupid because it starts, presumably it's a story sequel to the original game. So your character, who is the former world champion who got fucked out of the belt due to a double pin, all of a sudden you're like a 60 overall, which makes no sense. It has. I probably droned on. I don't remember the WWF Games episode about how much I hated the handicap matches in No Mercy. The four-way cage match in Day of Reckoning 2 and the subsequent three-way cage match are significantly. I was like screaming at the TV. My mom thought I was gonna have a fucking heart attack because of that fucking four-way cage match against Shawn, Christian, and Kane. And you can ask me if it was worth it to unlock Hulk Hogan in the end, and the answer is yes. Yes, it was. Because I got to leg drop every one of those guys from that cage match with Hulk Hogan afterward. But I I liked that game a lot. I think it's better than SVR06 in some ways.
Again, for me, not a big fan of Day of Reckoning. I mean, as you said about the graphics, yeah, it is a great looking game. They just didn't hit me, you know. These games, Day of Reckoning, I didn't get into them.
And up next is the highest rated wrestling game of all time on IGN at 9.2. WWE SmackDown vs. Raw 2006. I'll get out in front and say the day I got this game, the day this game came out, was the day I also played King of Colosseum 2 for the first time. So I already had a heavily slanted opinion of this game, like a negatively slanted one in terms of the gameplay. I'll say right now, though, I understand why that game got a 9.2. In terms of like content, just the amount of shit that you can do in that game, it was the deepest, most feature-rich wrestling game that had ever been made. That is, if you want to make a game that in the era where you don't get to release DLC and patch a bunch of shit in, if you wanted to release a video game that would be played for years afterward, like, aside from the obvious roster update, they didn't need to make a SmackDown 07. This game had enough shit in it where you would be okay for a couple of years. Unless you like were like really fiending for that roster update. They had a really, I didn't like the career mode limiting you to like 20 something characters that you could play as because of voiceovers, but there's a ton of different paths in that career mode. It's the game that introduced GM mode. It ripped off the crib feature from NFL 2K. They brought back title matches in exhibition mode for like actual WWE titles that you would unlock in the game. Also, you can still create a belt. That game had the most expansive create a wrestler mode that I think we'd ever had in a wrestling game to that point too. Huge graphical upgrade. It looks so much better than the original SVR. Great Legends roster. The fucking debut of Classic Arenas with WrestleMania 9. That's cool. They kept trying to do the thing where they slow down the SmackDown gameplay to make it a simulation, and it doesn't work. It's like trying to teach a horse to fucking use a walker. It makes no fucking sense. The horse is fine to like run on its own. Why are you trying to teach it to do something else?
This also had, speaking of career mode, do you remember how it starts?
Teddy Long getting run over and taking like a 300-foot bump.
Hell yeah.
Amazing moment.
That's a hell of a way to start a career.
This has to be discussed if we're talking about the career mode. So this game launches in the UK. It's so weird to say this. Eddie Guerrero's death happens exactly between this game's launch in the UK and this game's launch in the US. In this game, there is an angle where The Undertaker chokeslams Eddie Guerrero into a casket at Survivor Series, which is the November pay-per-view. Someone reported this on the WrestlingFigs.com forum the day Eddie died. They're like, hey guys, I don't even think they had the news yet. But they're like, here's the detailed breakdown of what happens. They got banned for it because somebody thought they were making it up.
Jesus.
No, that's just an unfortunate bit of timing. But that game's career mode's wild. There's an ECW reunion where RVD spray paints ECW on the undisputed belt. That's kind of cool. Again, I understand why this is like a lot of people's like if you were a ruthless aggression kid, if you were specifically the second half of that era with Cena and Big Dave as your top guys, I understand why that's like your Don Mega of wrestling games because it's got so much shit in it. I've just never enjoyed the gameplay because if you're a baby face, you do a flying elbow drop, congratulations, you have a finisher. Go and do another one. Congratulations, you're one move away from a finisher. If you are wrestling as a babyface and your character has quote unquote heel moves in their move set, it'll tank your momentum. There's no incentive to fucking play as a heel ever in either of those games. And it's the same way in SVR07 as well. It should also be noted this is the series debut on the PSP with the worst load times in the history of video games. We are talking, if you play a match with two created wrestlers, once you factor in the load screens between like picking the characters, first entrance, second entrance in the match, you are legitimately waiting 10 to 12 minutes. That's not an exaggeration. You are waiting, even if you don't use anything created. I did the save data transfer and played the career mode alongside my friend who was playing it on the PS2. He finished the career mode like 15 minutes before I did just because of load time. Horribly optimized game for the PSP. Very faithful, though, in terms of gameplay.
Did the PSP version have exclusive characters?
It has Jake Roberts, who you unlock in GM mode, but if you were one of the many that had a cheat device, you could just straight up unlock Jake in the PS2 version and never have to touch the PSP version. Also, some people have discovered that you can actually just straight up unlock Jake in the PS2 version if you win GM of the year and you draft him.
Oh, well, there we go.
So, yeah, the night my friend and I found the action replay codes and found ourselves able to run like Hogan 80s and Jake Roberts in exhibition mode in like 6-man Hell in a Cell matches. It was a glorious day. And from here, the series goes somewhere not good. In early 06, it's announced that the SmackDown games will be multi-platform going forward, effectively killing off having a different game for each platform. And I've seen arguments for and against this over the years. I think in terms of sales, it made a lot of sense. The SmackDown name carried way more cachet with the casual audience than the GameCube games that had changed their name halfway through the series, or the Xbox games that bewilderingly got high scores on IGN, but also if you ask people that actually played them, there weren't a lot of good things said. But SmackDown was like the mainstream brand. It was the game that people were buying systems for, or even just copies of the game that didn't necessarily like wrestling. They just liked playing the 6-man matches. So to that end, this makes, I guess, some business sense.
I felt with SmackDown versus Raw 2007, you mentioned like the previous games is when they started to slow it down. I felt like this was the one where they really slowed down the gameplay to try to make it more simulation.
It is slower still than 06. Yeah. This was one of those games that I was very, very excited for. The graphics look great. The roster is fantastic. Kurt Angle is still in the game despite leaving a month and a half earlier for TNA. And not only is he still in the game, he's the highest rated character in the game. But they saw the analog controls of Fight Night and thought we could do that in a wrestling game, and had no meaningful way to implement it. And it's a control scheme they had for several years that they changed every freaking year. Even making the ultimate control moves like mandatory across 2 grapple slots, effectively narrowing the move sets of characters in half for front grapples. Like, just a horrible idea. But analog control was like, the right analog controls were becoming a big deal in sports games. Madden introduced the hit stick. Fight Night had total punch control. Live had the analog like dribbling and stuff. So like, I get wanting to jump on the trend, but also you're not a fucking sports game. You're a wrestling game. You don't need to ride that particular wave. And this game had GM mode, expanded once again to have writers, which I say once again, it's the first incarnation of GM mode after 06. The writers apparently have an impact on your product. I never figured out what specifically.
They make it worse.
Well, I didn't see Vince Russo listed, so
Oh
who
God.
knows? Um, career mode was another. You have a limited number of characters you can play as because voiceovers have to be a big part of it. I didn't think there were any really overly bad storylines. I do think, as mean as this might sound, it's incredibly amusing. It's the second straight year the Undertaker has an angle with the person who dies not a super long time after the game comes out because there's the Benoit Undertaker angle. They didn't change any gimmick matches, and I no wait, is this is the first game with like the analog stick reach up to drain the meter ladder match, isn't it? Always hated that.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I always I always hated that, and also the one where it's like the timed like reach up pull down mini game. Always thought that one sucked. I mean, create mode's essentially the exact same thing as it was the year before, which again, '06 was as deep as we'd ever seen, so I don't really have any issues with that, I guess. But this wasn't a huge leap forward for the series. It was another step backward in terms of we know what these games were, but we're trying to conform to what sports games are becoming because the pursuit of realistic graphics also means that people are convinced the games have to play lifelike. And in a lot of instances, that leads to games that are just flat out not fun to play. Like the next several we're going to talk about.
To be honest with you, these SmackDown versus Raw games, a lot of them are so jumbled up in my mind. It's like because they have the same title as up for the year, so it's sometimes it's hard for me to differentiate. Looking over them like last night and today, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I remember this, I remember that. They all just feel the same though. Even when you go back and look at them, there's not much difference in them.
And actually, speaking of not being able to tell them apart, we might as well talk about '08 and '09 together because they're the same fucking game.
Yeah.
SmackDown vs. Raw 2008 came out the same day that Fire Pro R's US localization came out in '07. Obviously, the summer of '07, the Benoit family double murder suicide happened, which I think Justin Lieber said did not have a huge impact on that game. But if it didn't, they really intended to launch a game with like this little content in it. So I'm a little iffy on believing that. If that even was cited to Leaper, I'm almost certain it was though. He's a good source of information for like the THQ era of these games. But you have the 24/7 mode, which is like a lame career mode, or like the worst incarnation of GM mode that they ever shit out. The roster is completely gutted. There's like 58 characters or something like that in this game. It is the one and only appearance in the SmackDown series of Sabu and one of two
Cool,
appearances
yeah.
for Terry Funk. And Rick Rude makes his series debut in this game too. But to me, this game really needed another year of development. The PlayStation 3 version launched running 30 frames per second. And that was the first time, and I believe I mentioned this on a previous episode, that was the first time I ever really understood the difference between 30 and 60. Because that game felt so sluggish compared to the 360 version. It was unbelievable. And then, just shy of a year later, SmackDown vs. Raw 2009 launches on a Sunday in the US for some reason. Basically, same game. You get the Road to WrestleMania story mode, which people really love because that was their childhood story mode.
Tony.
Some of the stories are funny. Yeah, Brian Williams, shout outs. There's some wacky stories. That mode does give us the tribute to the Troops arena in a video game, which I've always thought that arena looked really cool.
Yeah, it does.
My feelings about the Iraq War notwithstanding, that's a very, very cool arena. Again, gameplay is the exact same. They introduced nothing new. There's nothing new in this game at all. The career mode that they have for you to level up your created wrestlers, because that's the big addition or subtraction, is the ability to manually assign your character stats. In the career mode in this game, you have to wrestle your character how you want their stats upgraded, which means you can accidentally, if you do too many running attacks, you can accidentally have like a Samoa Joe with like 99 speed if you just keep doing running moves unwittingly. I've always thought that was insanely stupid.
Oh yeah.
This is the series debut of Create a Finisher, which I know a lot of people want back. I think for the sake of online play, it's bad because you can you can make really broken finishers, and people did, because I played against people that did it in SmackDown '09. SmackDown '09 is the first game that didn't ship with like a dedicated Legends roster since SmackDown Shut Your Mouth. Don't think Rock or Austin are in that game, which is the first in the series for Rocky and the second in the series for Steve. Taz is in the game with flying head scissors and no Taz mission,
I mean,
though that's nice.
that's Taz, right? That's what he was known for. His flying head
They
scissors.
did introduce DLC in this game with a Legends DLC pack that is not related to the next game we're going to talk about, which came out between these two games. It was Vader, Earthquake, Doink the Clown, and the Bushwhackers. Or should I more accurately say, it was Vader with a Viscera moveset, Earthquake with Mark Henry's moveset, Doink with Santino Marella's moveset, and the Bushwhackers with, I believe it was Kurt Hawkins and Zack Ryder's moveset. They just changed the finishers and some of the taunts.
That's quite lazy on their behalf, isn't it?
Just an incredible lack of effort. There was also another DLC pack, and I had the PlayStation 3 version, so I don't know how different the Xbox one was. But I remember Ted DiBiase Jr., 2001 Kane, like holiday diva versions of like Maria and Kelly Kelly. There are probably others, but DiBiase Jr. was the big one for me with that pack because I was a big fan of him, still am. I don't care that he embezzled money. I don't care that his dad embezzled money either. His dad's still my favorite wrestler of all time. But it was a game where I had kind of turned the corner and started to enjoy '08 WWE. So to have a game that was like that representative of '08 WWE was cool. But I also was sitting there like through gritted teeth every time me and my friend would play online. Like we had fun because we were playing against each other and we would do stupid shit like okay, first one to fucking power Irish whip the other off the Hell in a Cell gets to do the glitch to go into the crowd. We didn't take that game seriously because it wasn't a game to be taken seriously. It was another half-assed, half-hearted effort in the series. And you know what? They changed the gameplay again in 2010. But before we get there, Legends of WrestleMania.
Okay, so there's 3 wrestling games that make me really sad. One that was never released, which is Mayhem 2. Showdown Legends of Wrestling because of the potential of that game, and the potential of this game as well. Legends of WrestleMania isn't a fun game to play very much at all. What it has going for it is the roster, obviously. You've got like a whole shitload of legends, as it says in the name. Ultimate Warrior, Hogan, Slaughter, Undertaker, it goes on and on. Triple H, Rock, Stone Cold. Obviously missing at the time is Randy Savage. The arenas all look very good. They're really detailed. Like there's separate arenas for each WrestleMania. WrestleMania 6 off the top of my head looks really good. You've got
It
Royal
does.
Rumble. Royal Rumble looks really good with the purple apron and everything. So everything looks good, and then you get to the actual game, and again, this is another one that's not fun to play.
I gotta say this about the gameplay. Mike Regan from Gaming Ring said that Brian Williams told him the gameplay was influenced by King of Colosseum 2.
I have no idea how.
Because when you grapple, there's the time button press. But
Yeah.
it's nothing like it's a series of quick time events.
Yeah,
That's all it is a series of quick time events.
And you're limited by tier, right? Like you have like low damage, and then you go into the next tier, and it's like medium, and then it's high, right? Like you can't pull off everything at the start of the match.
Well, no, but KOC is also the same. But God, we're really gonna make that comparison work, aren't we?
But you can though. Like with KOC, you do have an opportunity even to try those moves. But with Legends of WrestleMania, your moveset is limited to begin with.
Oh man, I hate that comparison actually does kind of work. I think this game is fun in the relive mode because that's the big mode. There's no career mode. It's WrestleMania Rewind mode. There's Relive, where much like in the showcase modes we're used to now, you recreate big moments from big WrestleMania matches. I remember having so much fun with Hogan and Andre in particular. There's only one match in that mode where you have to get every goal, and it's the Austin and Rock match at the very end, which I thought was a lot of fun. There's Rewrite mode, where you play as the person who lost the match. And then there's Redefine, where for some reason Big John Studd and Andre the Giant are having a Hell in a Cell match where they start on top of that motherfucker. We're not gonna ask the logical question of how do they make a cage that supports those two guys on top. We're just gonna run with it. It also features like Perfect and Boss Man in a ladder match. I think Snuka and Rick Rude in a cage match. There's no incentive to play this match as both sides. You can literally just pick one. The goals are the same. Actually, the goals are the same for every match. Every single match in the mode, they're the exact same. Um, I think one of the Brett and Yoko matches is a cage match. I think my biggest problem with how everything's presented is there's like not really any alternate attires. Like I know the Road Warriors have the LOD 2000 gear. Why is it like Mania 11 Shawn Michaels across every match he appears in that game when Mania 11's not even one of the matches?
Why is Michael Hayes in this game?
You know why Michael Hayes is in this game.
Yeah, but
He's Office, brother. Why is Flair in the game? Why is Arn in the game? Why is like NWA Dusty in the game? If you're under contract, you in the game. I wish they would have been able to make a deal to get Savage and Steamboat and everybody else because I think this game would have done a really great job at recreating Savage and Steamboat, much like it does a really bang up job of doing Hogan and Slaughter at Mania 7. But if you play it in 2K14, like it just feels like you're playing a generic match with objectives. The Legends of Mania match features Slaughter hitting Hogan with the chair to bust him open, and that goal's even called like a new set of rules because that was a big thing. Slaughter was like, I'm bringing in, we're playing under a new set of rules in the WWF. You're playing under Sergeant Slaughter's rules, and also that ties into the WWF's rule at the time of like weapon attacks on the outside of the ring not actually being disqualifications. But that game, if every one of those matches was the relive, like that game would have been so much better.
yeah,
Hell, that game does a better job of Brett and Austin than every other attempt they've had in all of the games they've done it in since.
yeah, it's just the overall gameplay of the tier system was not at all interesting. It felt so limiting, you know?
Yeah, I will say if you were like a casual, because that's who that game was aimed at, was the people who were going to be really excited about WrestleMania and walk into like Walmart or GameStop and see like a game with Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. And Austin and Rock were on the cover too, which I kind of question the wisdom of doing that because they'd been in so many games that like just having them on the cover really matter. Like you could have probably put like Warrior and somebody else on there and got people like really excited and had
Yeah.
Austin and Rock be like the two focal points on the back of the box. But I'm also coulda shoulda woulda a video game cover from 13 years ago. It doesn't really matter. I'm just saying what I thought at the time.
And interestingly enough, on this game, you could import the roster of, would have been 2009, right?
Not the whole roster,
Not the whole
a
roster,
lot of
but
it, but
a few of them, yeah.
most of the women's roster was not included, and several of the people, like I don't think you could transfer Trevor Murdoch over. Like the people that had been let go, I don't think were part of that whole deal. But the really weird thing is like you would transfer them over. The SmackDown characters are significantly smaller than the Legends of WrestleMania characters, which made playing them against each other pointless anyway. So like was the idea you were supposed to transfer all of these guys over from SmackDown '09 and experience them in like a different gameplay engine? I don't know what the actual idea was there, but that was not good.
I don't know where this is coming from, but there's like a weird cover on IMDb, and it's got Hogan, Austin, Roddy Piper, Shawn Michaels, and then in the middle it's got Andre the Giant and The Rock. I've never seen that before. I guess it's fan made.
I still want to see it.
I think there was other versions of this game too. I think there was there a DS version or something?
No, there was a mobile phone version that had Hillbilly Jim, and I had that shit on my LG Shine.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it did not play well. It's a mobile game from 2009, but I remember being like, why would you put him here but not in the? Oh, we forgot to note that in Here Comes the Pain. That's like I think the only video game appearance of Hillbilly Jim on a console. So
Yeah, that's right. If I remember correctly
and
too
they
about Legends of WrestleMania, somebody posted this, like the textures online, and they found that Greg Valentine just has a reused Jim Ross face.
that's
Yep.
Jesus Christ. That's insane.
Yep.
On one hand, that's like incredible resourcefulness. On the other, I feel like that's a huge insult to Greg Valentine.
God damn, the arenas in this game are so good though.
Yeah, they were. I think one of the things I remember from like Axe Bomber might have been you posting a comparison of the Mania 6 arena from that game when they showed Mania 6 and 2K14. I thought it was the same arena until I saw the comparison picture you posted.
I think I posted that on Twitter maybe recently. But yeah, like they've got the Trump Plaza on this as well. Like everything looks really good. And they did have alternate
Yeah.
tires that I forgot about. They had the Legion of Doom from '92, and they had WrestleMania
Yeah,
14.
that's the 92 gears their default. If you got like a day one copy of the game, it came packaged with like an unlock code for the LOD 2000 tires. I think there's a rocker Shawn Michaels in there too.
It makes me sad that I didn't enjoy this game more because it would be something that I would go back to today, you know?
Yeah, it's a real shame that they never. I was always one of those people who was like they should never do like a dedicated Legends game
Yeah.
because you're gonna cannibalize one game or the other using the same engine for both games. But I think I would have been content if this game was just take the SVR09 roster out because they were all on disc. That's wasted space anyway. Give me, God, I can't believe I'm saying this. Give me the SVR09 gameplay with that graphics style and like a roster of like 70 legends, and I would have been happy for years. Because this is still the point where like they're hoarding guys under WWE Legends deals, which they're starting to do again now. I guess thankfully if you're somebody who collects the action figures, but that game with better gameplay would have been absolutely wonderful.
It's got Hacksaw Jim Duggan, which somebody much like Tito Santana, who was like constantly around during the late 80s and early 90s, but hasn't really made a lot of video game appearances.
Yeah, he's in like obviously Superstars the arcade game. He's in Mania Challenge for the NES, and he's in the Genesis version of Royal Rumble. That's
Yeah,
like
and
it until
yeah,
he
that seems
pops up
crazy
in
for
this
him.
game. Especially given how over he was. Like people still
Exactly,
love
yeah.
Hacksaw Jim Duggan. He's allegedly no longer under a Fed Legends deal too, so not
Maybe he'll
looking
get
good for 2K23.
maybe he'll get signed to Power Town.
I hope. Do we have to talk about SmackDown 2010?
Well, I don't remember a lot about it. I remember was this the one with the weird Road to WrestleMania, or was that the next one? Was that 2011? It was like
2011 is the one with the Undertaker, like you challenged the Undertaker at
okay,
Mania
so
one.
that's the
This
one
was
I'm thinking of.
this game had the Mickey James Road to WrestleMania where they run back the Trish and Mickey storyline, but with Natalia. For my money, that's like the best written of all of the Road to WrestleMania stories across all the games that mode is in. I again they changed the gameplay because it's no longer ultimate control moves are now just moves that are part of your move set. It's the four grapples up front again. I wasn't real big on this one because again, you if you downloaded a creator wrestler from Community Creations, you still had to take them into exhibition and grind them to have the stats that you wanted. And I didn't like that. I didn't like that Road to Mania had, quite frankly, some really uninteresting stories to me. I didn't think the game graphically looked that much better than SmackDown '09 did. I didn't think that, even though they changed the gameplay, it did not feel like a significant leap forward. And I think this is the first game where they removed intergender matches. So, like, you couldn't even do funny shit like Mickey James versus Big Show anymore.
This was the when they added story designer, right?
Yes. Yeah, this is the first game that had that. But if I remember correctly, this was like, obviously, because it's the first game it's in, it was
Limited,
the
yeah.
most bare bones one. I do remember the car exploding segment you could do with it because that was like my go-to with story designer in this game. But it wasn't a mode I really got excited about the potential of until like WWE 12, I think, when I started seeing like you have like the new legacy type like just shit post ones. But I remember in like WWE 12 seeing people doing like actual like storyline ones that felt like storylines that would be in an actual like career mode. But I don't have a ton to say about SmackDown 2010 except the DS version. The DS version was not a touchscreen fever dream nightmare like the previous two games. They went with tap for weak, hold for strong. The character models look a little weird because they don't have like the console game lighting on them, so like they're very flat. There's not a lot of like lighting detail. I thought the gameplay in this game was fantastic compared to the other two, which sounds like I'm damning it with faint praise, but I remember the first time I played this, I sat down and without really thinking, I dumped like 3 hours into this game and I was like, I'm having a blast with this. What the fuck is going on here? There are touchscreen components, like you can collect cards that are like, you get a boost or like you can't be reversed for 30 seconds or like Eve Torres will magically appear in the crowd and distract your opponent. I'm not kidding, that's actually one of them. The game has a story mode where you actually do like mini games to build your stats. Stuff like jump rope, grappling drills, I think is one of them. Hindu squats is one of them. It feels like an RPG type story mode that also doesn't funnel you down one distinct direction. I've never finished it. I got a considerable considerable amount into it. I think it is a real shame we did not get a sequel to that game, because that engine on the 3DS with better graphics and maybe a longer dev window, people would be talking about that game like it's a classic. I still think people need to find a DS or 3DS or God forbid emulation and give this game a try. It is a forgotten, very, very hidden gem because of the system that it's on and the reputation of the two games that preceded it. I promise you it's not a bad game. It is a lot of fun to play. It also has an ambulance match, if that does anything for anybody listening to this.
Yeah, I don't have too much to say about. I've never played the DS version, but SmackDown vs. Raw 2010 overall, don't really have anything to say about it. I don't even really remember it, to be honest with you.
And then up next, because we're in the one game a year era here, people. This is not going to be a 4-hour podcast, I can assure you, looking at how long we've actually been recording. SmackDown 2011, kind of lame. Road to WrestleMania, some wacky elements in the Undertaker one.
There was a
really
match
bad
with, like,
voice acting.
There was a match now with like druids in the crowd, right? There was old druids.
Yeah, and then there's like, if you lose to Undertaker at Mania, it's like a gauntlet with druids that's like a scripted loss.
Yeah.
So you just kind of stand there, get your ass kicked. You don't like try to fight back. This game was severely bugged and it never got patched. Like the default HP of the characters is like almost 0. You could win matches in like 3 moves, and it was never ever fixed. Cool weapons physics in this game. It was the first game where they had, I think, the Havoc physics engine for the weapons. Some neat DLC, like there's Luger, 92 Shawn Michaels, Wade Barrett, if that does anything for anybody.
The problem with that DLC, though, is they released Luger and the Nitro Arena at the same time. This is the first time Nitro was in the game. And so
Right.
you're getting like WCW Luger, but you get made in the USA. That always bothered me.
Yeah, that was, I didn't get that. And you couldn't even, I should have also noted Superstar Threads makes its debut in SmackDown 2010, which is the like palette swap mode. It's not full attire editor, but you can change colors, and that's cool.
Yeah.
You couldn't even Superstar Threads him to look like the Luger you'd want to use in the Nitro Arena.
No.
Also, 2011 is the debut of Universe mode. Go on.
If you turned his attire black, you could still see like the outline of the Stars and Stripes. So
yeah, it wasn't very good. Universe mode, speaking of, was not good at all in this. It's again first implementation, super bare bones. You could not do. No, I'm an idiot. Universe mode debuts in WWE 12. I'm sorry, but
no.
Everything I was about to say was absolutely true.
No, I think it did debut in this, didn't it?
This is how unprepared we are.
2011.
What? Oh no! You know what I'm thinking of? You know why I thought it debuted in 12 actually for a second? 12 was the year where like they had kind of promised you could do title matches on TV shows, and then you couldn't. And the guy from THQ, Marcus Stevenson, I hated that guy. I was like, oh, we did it to make titles mean more. And somebody posted like a list of all of the WWE title matches that had happened on TV that year, because they did a lot of them on TV. But yeah, it's super bare bones. I don't think there's no show customization component. It's literally just Raw, ECW, and SmackDown with the pay-per-views. The customization comes in a year later with 12 when they add a bunch of other stuff that we'll talk about in a moment. I know a lot of people look at 2011 as like the big what if, like if they just pressed forward with this, like this is the base. I don't see this being SVR06 where like, look at the content here. This was the precipice of something great. I think that's the next game in the series, which we'll talk about in a minute. But before we get there, You know what happens when you take the TNA Impact development team and tell them to go wild? You get our next game, which is WWE All Stars.
I love this game. I played this so much when it first came out. I actually
Me
uploaded
too.
the Cena and Hogan video package on my YouTube channel at the time. It was so good. Just like, combining moves, going from move to move, like the story mode with Paul Bearer and The Undertaker in the funeral parlor was really fun stuff. I love it.
The current ladder with Randy Orton, the tag ladder with DX.
Yeah.
I was such an unabashed. The first time they showed this at E3 2010, I saw a lot of negativity because of the graphics, but I watched the gameplay of Cena and Rock, and I was like, this looks way better than SmackDown 2010 or 2011 rather. Like this looks fucking fun. And then of course we see more and more of the game, and then in February of 2011, Randy Savage is announced. We get the cool trailer with him cutting the promo for the game. And then they dropped the demo with, I think, Warrior and Ray being the only two playable characters. I might be wrong on that, but I remember I used them. And playing that game was like, oh, okay. So there is a different way to make an arcade wrestling game where it's not arcade but kind of realistic like SmackDown, or like arcade but like batshit insane like Mania and In Your House. This was like, and I know Sal DeVito worked on the game, obviously the NBA Jam lineage there. He also worked on Impact, which had no NBA Jam lineage, or influence rather. This felt like a wrestling version of NBA Jam. And the roster on the current site is what it is. It was 2011 WWE. What are you going to do? But like the Legends roster was insane. I loved all of like the SmackDown Fist arena in that game with like the red glowing light behind the stage. The SummerSlam arena looked really, really cool. All of the arenas looked so fucking neat. So many characters with like cool like alternate costumes. Like Savage, I think, had 3 different ones. Hogan had 3 different ones. Andre had like Afro Andre in as like an alternate. The wrestler classes and even combined classes for some guys meant that like Hogan and Warrior were both brawlers, but Hogan was a brawler big man hybrid, which meant that he had all of the benefits of being a brawler, but he was also hard to bump. He also had like the heel counter type, so he had the eye gouge strike counter that would stun the opponent. The grapplers, like Bret Hart, could chain like grapple moves. Like Bret Hart didn't just have strike combos; he had grapple combos. And Triple H was like a brawler grappler hybrid because, of course, he is. The high flyer archetype was incredibly broken. R-Truth, I remember everybody saying, was the best character in the game by a mile. But like every class type played so distinctly and had like unique move sets for certain guys. The finishers all looked really fucking cool. The big man class had like the stored strong strike where you would hit them and they'd bounce off the ropes, the turnbuckle, the barricade, and they'd go flying. And if you were Big Show and had the WMD sword, you basically got a free KO. Like playing as Big Show online was a lot of fun because you'd have the people that would try to do the loops with the high flyers. One strong strike when they were low enough in terms of health, followed by the WMD. That was get out of jail free every time. What a wonderful game. Great
Yeah.
DLC too that you can no longer get. But if you get the 3DS version, all of the DLC is unlockable.
Who was DLC in it again?
Big Boss Man, Million Dollar Man, Ted Jr., Michael Hayes, the Road Warriors. I think Mark Henry was DLC.
Michael Hayes again, of course.
Well, yeah. R-Truth was DLC. Honky Tonk Man was DLC. Just a fucking wild little assortment of characters for a game that I know we all hoped would get a sequel, but it never fucking did.
No, that was super disappointing. Yeah, I really love this game. I remember the negativity about it as well, because I remember on Fire Pro Club when the first images and stuff came out, and everyone was like, "Oh," but I think it exceeded my expectations, that's for sure.
Also, Dusty Rhodes was a DLC. I knew I was forgetting somebody significant.
Yeah, that's right.
The American Dream.
American
Dusty
Dream, baby,
Rhodes.
live and in living color.
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh no, we're gonna do the whole thing in Dusty Rhodes impressions now. Let's
I
not.
mean, I guess I could. The next game is WWE 12, which for me restored a lot of faith in the series. despite not being able to do title matches in Universe, and even with show customization, Universe still feeling a little bare bones. They changed the gameplay back to buttons instead of the analog stick. They sped the gameplay up a little bit. There's a whole video, WWE 12 Predator technology, which is maybe not the best name for an engine. But they showed like if you bump somebody early in the match, they'll get up selling instead of laying on the mat selling, and it really changed a lot about the pacing of the game. They also brought in like the collision detection from Dave Reckoning, where you can interrupt moves. They showed that like sequences like the 619 were no longer canned animations, so like they show in the Predator technology video, Ray does the little kick, Cena does the five knuckle shuffle, and then Ray goes to the top for the frog splash. They made a lot of changes to the gameplay that felt like small changes, but ended up making the game feel so much better. That's the game that introduced the QTE comebacks, which I know got abused later when they just made generic ones to pad out everybody on the roster having access to one. The Road to WrestleMania story mode sucks. The less I talk about it, the happier I'll be. Create an Arena debuts in this game. You can't change the stage, so it's like a generic WWE HD era stage. But again, setting up what could be in the future games. The main series debut of Randy Savage, because he's DLC and he's in the WrestleMania 7 attire. It's the main series return of Vader. The only video game ever that has Axe and Smash as Demolition to date. Brian Danielson debuts in the series as Daniel Bryan. Misako debuts as Sin-Cara.
With the lighting.
Just a tremendous. Yeah, and it looks like shit.
Yep.
It looks worse than it did on TV. But it was so cool to have The Rock, who returned in February, is the pre-order bonus, quote unquote. He was a pack, and if you got the day one edition, it's an unlocked code. Even if you get it used, that code still works if you go into the options menu. The DLC included Awesome Kong as Karma. Jim Ross was DLC, and me and my friends had a fucking field day with him. This was a game where like create a finisher would do like really horrific glitches that wouldn't resemble the move that you created at all. But this one felt like, okay, they figured it the fuck out. This is the foundation. We're good from here on out. Like we're back to where they understand like it needs to be fun. It doesn't need to dick ride all of these sports game trends. It doesn't need to have like all this unnecessary bullshit on the gameplay. We're fucking finally back, and the good times are here again.
I know you said you didn't want to talk about, but the road to WrestleMania for this, is this where they had Kevin Nash and they brought back WCW and they had sort of a War Games-esque match?
Yeah, that's the reason we have the Clash of the Champions and the Starrcade arenas in that game. It's also the one where Triple H is on the throne with all the belts, and Austin Aries voices your creator wrestler character.
Jacob Katz.
This was the one that Justin Leeper didn't do, and I'm not a super huge fan of a lot of the ones that he did do, but they're all significantly better than what they did here.
Yeah, I like.
Thankfully, it was the last time we got this. I liked that it got me the Starrcade and Clash of the Champions arenas.
Yeah, exactly.
That was pretty much it. Universe mode, you could finally customize shows. I say finally, it's the second incarnation of the mode. You couldn't book title matches on TV yet. That drove me nuts. It drove me nuts when it was initially implemented too, but like they were doing WWE title matches like semi-regularly, it felt, on Raw in 2011. So to not have that in didn't make any sense at all to me.
Creating the shows in Universe mode, couldn't you not skip the intro so you were forced to watch the pyro every show?
Yeah, and that was also the game where it had the transition of the crowd shots, or with the crowd shots between segments, and sometimes your game would soft lock if you were using a fucking created arena. I'd have to hit the PS button just to make sure my system wasn't about to break. The next game, and I know you're real fired up to talk about this, is WWE WrestleFest for iOS and Android.
I'm not really fired up to talk about it. I never played it myself, but I mean, okay, I remember just seeing the gameplay, and I thought this is a pile of shit. Like comparing it directly to the original WrestleFest, which is what I did. Like I put Big Boss Man side by side. It looked nowhere near as good as the original game, and this was released obviously several years after.
Yeah,
Um,
2 decades later.
yeah, and I was just like, how the hell could this happen? Why would you call this game WrestleFest when it just makes me want to play the original and not touch this thing, basically?
I'll say, gameplay wise, I don't like touchscreens for wrestling games. I don't. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. Fuck you. I don't like touchscreens for wrestling games. Um, it felt like a touchscreen version of WrestleFest to some extent, gameplay wise. I did not like that if the AI kicked out with no health left, they got 30% of their health back. Which Marcus Stevenson, the guy at THQ, I hated, was like, don't you guys remember how hard it was to beat the AI in the original? The AI didn't fucking regenerate health. If they
Yeah,
kicked out, if for some reason they kicked out of one Ultimate Warrior splash, motherfucker, they weren't kicking out of two. I can tell you that goddamn much right now. Having said that, I thought a lot of the arena like DLCs that they released were really neat. I thought the roster they expanded to was really cool. I do agree it does not look very good. It's also an early 2010s mobile game. And also, I think we talked about this on the history of the WWF games video because I'm pretty sure we mentioned this when we brought up WrestleFest. I'd really like to see what that game would have looked like on the PSN and XBLA version, because I think if you put those sprites on like a bigger screen, you might have been able to see a little bit more of the detail.
hmm.
I don't think that gameplay is not. I get why you do it as a mobile game, but I don't get it because like it's a button masher. That stuff never feels good on like a touchscreen, or at least in my experience, it doesn't. So to me, like I enjoyed it a little bit for what it was, but also that AI kicking out of everything. Like you basically, if you played as a wrestler that had a pinfall finisher, you were fucked. You basically had to play as wrestlers with submission finishers, or you were never going to win a match. And I didn't like that. That didn't feel true to the original game. But hey, it was neat seeing like a WCW Nitro arena in that game.
No, I hated that too because if you're gonna call it WrestleFest, then I want it to be early '90s WWF. I don't want WCW. I don't want any of that shit. You know, I love WCW. Don't get me
I
wrong, but I didn't want that in my WrestleFest.
I was happy to have any WCW acknowledgement that I could, because this was still like knee deep in them. I mean, the Nitro DVD had just released a year before and somehow surprised them by selling as well as it did.
Who could have imagined,
Who would
right?
have thought you could? Who would have thought you bury the fucking IP for 10 years and there's still enough of us that come out day one to buy that DVD to tell you we want more of it?
Yeah,
Crazy, isn't it? Um,
unbelievable.
yeah, but I didn't have I don't have like a lot of bad memories of WrestleFest for iOS. I actually still have the file for it on my computer, but my iPod Touch died like 4 years ago. I'm never gonna get to play it again.
Yeah, I never had any desire to play it after I saw like the video and screenshots. So I was just like, fuck this. You know, this isn't WrestleFest. But then again, I haven't played it, so I guess I can't really speak to it fully.
Yeah, I get why you would be turned off at first glance for seeing it. I completely get it. And that brings us, I think, to the last game of the THQ era, which is a shame because this is a good one, I think.
Love this
WWE
game.
13.
Yeah, I was playing it actually just a few months ago on the PS3. Obviously the big thing about this game is the Attitude Era mode. Um,
Which,
hell of a lot of fun.
go on. Yeah, I loved that mode. So the night this game came out was the night of Superstorm Sandy, which I was nowhere near. I live in Ohio, but we were on the back end of the system, meaning we had, and I'm not kidding when I say this, like sustained 60-mile-an-hour winds for several hours. We were convinced, my friend and I, when we went to GameStop, like we're gonna get the game installed and the power is gonna go. Somehow our shitty little infrastructure in our town held up through the 60-mile-an-hour gust. I think it was 60-mile gusts and 45 sustained winds. It was insane. You just heard the wind howling for like a day straight. It was wild. I can't imagine what the people on the East Coast were going through on that one. But we got the game, and I'm standing there telling him all the shit that's in it. He's not even following the coverage. He just bought it because it was a new WWE game. He's like, what do you mean Ken Shamrock's in the game? And I just like, I'm gonna shut up. I'm gonna let you see all of this shit for yourself. And I They took everything I liked about 12 and made it better. They didn't make anything that I liked about 12 worse. Create an arena got better. Create a wrestler got better. The Attitude Era mode lent itself to having an insane amount of content that was classic that I was interested in. And I know a lot of people dislike Showcase. I get it. I do. But Showcase, historically, going back to the original incarnation of it, has facilitated a lot of classic content being in these games that if it weren't there, people like me would not buy these fucking games. Even like some of the good ones. Like I would have probably been like 50% less interested in this game if they didn't fucking show off all the Attitude Era stuff. Because this was like, it had been 14 years. I was a little nostalgic for it. And the game looked neat graphically. It looked like it was it looked like it was showing that time period the proper respect in terms of making sure everybody looked accurate and sort of had accurate move sets. Austin still had the powerbomb and the German suplex because I don't fucking know aliens. But I loved the shit out of this game and the very little of it I got to play at my friend's house. And then when I got to play a little bit more of it later on, I still loved it. It if THQ had to go out and never be in the IP, never be associated with another wrestling game again, this is about as good a way to go out as fucking humanly possible. This was maybe the next game, which let's be honest, for what it is, 2K14 is a THQ game, but it has a different publisher's logo on the front, so that's for next time we talk about the WWE games.
I just wanted to talk about the Attitude Era mode because there was some cool stuff they did. Like they would pull audio directly from TV. So
Yeah.
there was one match, for example, that had Austin and Vince McMahon on commentary on the actual match, and they would actually have that in the game, which was really, really cool. There was that funny one where Survivor Series '97, they have a backstage segment of Triple H with Shawn Michaels and Vince McMahon in a dressing room,
Oh,
where Triple H is like, if Brett doesn't want to do
F
business,
that.
we'll do business for him, and then shuts the door, which I thought was pretty goddamn funny.
I remember like my friend being like, "Oh wow, that's crazy," and I'm like, "Yeah, that they threw that in there. That's not how this happened. I'm almost certain that's not how this happened."
No, and
But
they had great DLC like Chainsaw Charlie and Gangrel and I think maybe
in Rikishi,
Val Venus maybe.
yeah, which is funny because I remember Val Venus publicly said like WWE endorsed SOPA or one of those fucking stupid anti-piracy things, and Val Venus spoke out publicly against him, and like 2 months later, it's like, "Oh, he's in the game." Like, yeah, you sure have some fucking convictions there, don't you, buddy?
I do have a personal history with this game in a very small way.
Oh,
So Brodus Clay, when he debuted as the Funkasaurus, um, I think it was actually that night. This is when I used to stay up till God knows what time, and I was bored, and I came up with like a rip off, basically a rip off Jurassic Park logo that was in red and black, and it was a silhouette of Brodus Clay and the Funkadactyls, Naomi and the other the Cameron. And then I just tweeted it to Brodus Clay, and I was like, "Yeah, here's this." And then like a few weeks later, I was at the movie theater when they used to show pay-per-views there, and they had the Royal Rumble, and I think it was him against Drew McIntyre, and he had my logo on the back of his gear, and I was like, "Holy shit!" Because I had no idea that was gonna happen. And I met him at WrestleMania Access, and I thanked him for that. And he was like half asleep, so he was just like, "Oh, no problem." Um, so when WWE 13 came out, I think by that point WWF they never officially used my logo. He did. They created their own Jurassic Park ripoff logo, which was just like him doing like a T-Rex pose or something. But in WWE 13, so I think what happened too was that someone actually took my logo and at one point made like an animated disco ball on the inside, just spinning around. In WWE 13, they have my logo with what looks like the disco ball inside. Um, but it's drawn a little bit differently. So they basically paid someone to put that logo in the game, ripping off my logo, which was really strange and interesting.
I
Um,
would have sued him.
I don't think I could have got anything for that. I mean, I was ripping off Jurassic Park anyway, but I mean, they did that. There was
I
somebody
think you
else
still could have. You should. I advocate suing WWE for no reason at all. You at least have a reason.
at that time. I was probably like, yeah, I want to sue. But I think there was somebody else that made a logo for Beth Phoenix that they used that in her Titantron, which that person never got any credit for. Um, so it was kind of surreal, but yeah.
It's I still would have sued him.
Yeah, I don't know.
I would have.
It was fun though. It was
You would have.
crazy. It was like, what is this doing in here? You know?
You would have had the whole fucking Fire Pro Club community around you, bro. You could have got him. I think.
Yeah. Oh
I
well.
don't think we could have crowdfunded some sort of legal defense for you, but
I could have hired maybe Clarence Mason or something.
to kind of put a bow on this topic, THQ is back in the wrestling game market. You've heard us discuss this game on every episode so far. AEW Fight Forever is coming out reportedly in February of 2023. It marks the THQ IP's return to wrestling games, and they're partnered with Ukes and AEW Games, and that game sure looks good. So if the THQ name comes back, and they're leaning into the nostalgia too. You've seen the video where it goes from like THQ Nordic to THQ to like the like rhombus shaped THQ logo, right?
Yeah.
They're obviously leaning into the nostalgia, and they're working with Ukes again. And I don't know. THQ's legacy is very complicated as it pertains to wrestling games, and feel free to cut me off at any point when I'm saying this. They were the publisher for a lot of the best wrestling games that this continent has ever seen.
Oh
World
no. I
Tour,
I don't
Revenge.
see how that could be denied. I mean, they were the most. They produced the most content, right? So.
Yeah, they're the most prominent. But I've seen a lot of people say they like, oh, who cares when they went under, like, oh, who gives a shit? THQ, they sucked, and it's like World Tour, Revenge, Mania 2000, No Mercy, SmackDown, SmackDown 2, SmackDown Shut Your Mouth, SmackDown Here Comes the Pain, Mania 18, Mania 19, the Day of Reckoning games. Their two most recent console games, three actually, fucking throwing All Stars. Like they had an insane output. 2K's had the license for almost a decade. Name me like three good games they've made. You can't. You fucking can't. I'll spot you 2K14. Find me two more.
No, I refuse.
So I guess to close, we'll do some action figure discussion because there was at least one significant thing revealed yesterday to me. There was one significant thing. Have you been keeping up with the Mattel Coliseum collection?
I did, and I saw those figures, and I saw the pre-order go up, and it was too much money. I was like, I can't spend this much money right now.
That's understandable. For anybody who's wondering what we're talking about because you came here for video games and haha, you're listening to action figure discussion. Um, the Coliseum Collection is a new subset of the WWE Ultimate Edition line where they're paying tribute to the original LJN line from 1985 to 1988, and then the one series by the Canadian company Grand Toys in 1989. The first set dropped yesterday, which was Terry Funk based on the LJN figure, obviously, and Hulk Hogan based on the white and red attire LJN. That if you were somebody who owned a shirted Hogan LJN, it was probably that one. The red and yellow version's super duper rare. Last night on Instagram Live, Steve Ozer from Mattel revealed the second wave, which will be Jake the Snake Roberts and Ravishing Rick Rude. And I was elated because I'm a huge Jake Roberts fan, a huge Rick Rude fan. I did see some blowback from the community about doing those two guys because I guess the Jake is really similar to
The
the
Hasbro.
Legends figure. I actually saw people praising them because they're similar to the Hasbro attires.
Yeah,
I guess they did an Elite Jake a year or two ago when they brought back the Legends line, and one of the chase is either it is the chase because I have the regular one. The chase is in basically the same attire. I saw complaining that he doesn't have purple boots like the LJN, which, yeah, I get it. But also, Terry Funk doesn't have the correct color chaps on the Coliseum line figure.
that's
But you
true.
have
Yeah,
people using like those like sort of trivial points to be like, well, then why can't they just do different attires? Because the bulk of the figure is the same.
yeah, and
Like,
that's the
quit
whole
being
point.
pedantic. Yeah, there were people last night who were mad that they didn't get WrestleMania 2 Heart Foundation, and you would never get them anyway. That's not what the LJN figures were in.
No.
Like that's like a whole ass different color than the LJN figures were in. I think they look fantastic. The Damien, much like the original LJN Damien, is going to be like a bendy, so you can pose him however you want, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I think the
And
figures are really cool. Like, it's just too much money for me.
so is it a case where like they would ship to you from the US and the shipping is really brutal, or is it also just the base price for the package is too
What
much?
was the base price again? I need to remind myself. Was it like
$70 American.
so $70 American? Let me see. Let me do this very quickly. It is the shipping as well, because when it comes with the shipping, that's just insane. But $70 US is about, yeah, it's about 93 Canadian, and then shipping's probably going to be what, like another 20, 30 US, so it's not cheap.
No, not at all.
Yeah,
I think
so
that line is the coolest fucking thing Mattel has done ever.
yeah, and it's a shame because I'll never see them for cheap anywhere.
For the next round, if I'm in a better position financially, we'll work something out. Also, you still need my ringside exclusive Sting if I find all of the shit that goes with them. I used to give the Mattel line a lot of shit, but they've given me no reason to say anything bad the last like year and a half, 2 years. They've done a phenomenal job, and also like there's a part of me that thinks they might get deep enough in their bag eventually to do a Coliseum collection ring with the blue bar cage. And if they do, if Steve or Bill are happening to listen to this, I'll buy it. I don't care. I will absolutely. If you recreate the original LJN packaging for the ring with like an Ultimate Edition ring, I'll buy that shit. I don't care. Also, Jordan Grace tweeted a test shot prototype of her Impact figure. If that does anything for anybody. Apparently it doesn't.
Um, it's hard to say. I mean, it's just a test shot, so there's no real detail on it. Um,
Yeah.
but
It
I'm
does at
interested.
least confirm they're still coming.
Yeah, I'm interested in see what the final product look like.
I'm interested to see if people get their Dynamite Kid from Chella or Wrestling Trader or whoever is shipping them now. Figure Collections revealed in a video a first look at um, the variant for Sunny Ultimo, Sunny Ono and Ultimo Dragon. I'm having a banner day with the English language, as you can hear. Um, Ultimo's in pink, Sunny Ono's in I think gold or yellow.
He's
I
in
mean, could be either.
yes, Ultimo. There's the bluish green, and then there's like the pink one. That Ultimo figure looks really cool, and I'm gonna have to try and stop myself from buying that one.
I do like that with a lot of those bone crushing wrestlers figures. I can look at either the sketch or the actual prototype, and immediately my brain knows what figures they're based on.
Yeah,
Like when I saw the Ultimo sketch, I was like, Ken Shamrock. Immediately. When I saw the Savage sketch, I was like, upper body is like torso's British Bulldog, the legs are British Bulldog, and the arms are Billy Gunn. I win. No, they're
and
not Billy Gunn. They're Steve Austin. Or no,
this
Triple H from Series 6.
Sonny Ono is Clarence Mason, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
Initially, I thought he was the Jackal, but then I actually saw the Clarence Mason figure again and was like, oh, nope, that's the one.
yeah.
That's who he's based on.
Is
And
Blue Mini, is that like Steve Williams?
the legs are the legs are like a different version of Steve Williams because they did like Meanie specific shorts.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm drawing a blank because somebody actually posted the two, like the figure, the arms, and the shirt torso are from now. Because I thought it was like Road Warrior's arms and then like the Bubba Dudley from BCA 2.0. But I think it's like it's not the Savio Vega torso, or is it?
Don't
No,
know. Don't know. I don't think so.
it looks exactly like the Dudley's torsos from the 2.0 BCA line from 0102.
Yeah.
That's a cool figure. I just, all due respect to the Blue Meanie, the price point on those figures, especially given my I mean, I have nostalgia for the bone crunching action figures, but that that price point of like $45 for those, like, very, 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 very much limits the choices I'm going to make when it comes to like purchasing any of those figures. They look neat though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you seen people are starting to get the AEW Supreme Kenny Omega and Malachi Black figures in?
I've seen them. I went to my GameStop because I heard there's figures showing up in Canada now, but the Street Fighter ones, I didn't find anything in my store, so
I've heard it's only the Kenny. The Young Bucks ones, I don't think I've read about people finding those, or have they? I haven't seen them.
I don't know. It just might be Kenny, but the only ones I see in the stores now are like the John Silver and the Brody Lee. Um, trying to think of what else I saw recently. Nyla Rose, Young Bucks. Not the Street Fighter ones, but the I think they're like purple attire.
Oh, the Series 7 ones that are based on the match with FTR.
Yeah, I don't pay much attention to AEW figures, to be honest.
Yeah, the line has been a very, very big mixed bag as
Yeah.
of late. I have the Supreme Kenny. I own two of it because I wanted both attires. That figure, just the default one that's posed in the box, is like one of the best wrestling figures ever made. I don't know why. Kenny and Cody Rhodes are like the two guys who avoided having shitty figures made. Everybody else in this line, well, no, Darby Allin. Darby Allin and Sting, because they've got multiple figures now and they have no bad ones. So it's like those four. Everybody else that has multiple figures has at least one really shitty one.
Yeah, the one of the worst ones I feel like I've seen is the Miro because the shorts they put on them just don't. I think they're like
The
soft goods, right?
No, they're sculpted. They're
Oh,
Yeah,
are
that
they?
Miro figure's terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
The
it's pretty
like
bad.
super long monkey arms too.
Yeah.
Just not a good figure. There's so many figures in that line. Like the John Silver. I get why you make that figure. I I don't get why you released it. That when they announced that Dark Order wave for Unmatched, I figured Brody's gonna sell because he's Brody. Evil Uno's gonna sell because he looks cool. Good fucking luck with the rest of that series. Stu Grayson and John Silver, if you don't know, they look interchangeable, despite the fact Stu Grayson's like 2 feet taller. Um, and Anna Jay is cool, but like it seems like the women's figures in this line tend to shelf warm more than in the WWE line.
Hmm.
Because I'm sure you've seen like the end caps from stores where it's like all Riho or all Sheeta or all Nyla or a
Yeah,
combination of the three.
that's the thing. Like I've been seeing Riho a lot in different stores.
And it's a real shame. I think Nyla in particular, I mean, there's reasons people would be dickheads about not buying that. I think also just the fact the figure doesn't look very good.
No.
She has like a gigantic fucking head. Like it reminds me of the later Jax figures where the heads were like so much bigger than the neck. It didn't make any fucking sense. I think that's part of the reason because I would have bought that figure if I saw it in stores and then I saw the final version and went, maybe next time. And like that's the same set with the really bad FTR, the really shitty Young Bucks, the fucked up Lance Archer. There's a reason a lot of people jumped off that line right around the time Unrivaled 5 came out and like the line took a serious downturn in terms of quality. I bought a bunch of figures recently because I was like, I want the Danielson, I want the promo Kenny Omega. As bad as I think they are, I still wanted the JR and Tony just on general principle of being JR and Tony.
Can you
But
take
that
the
line,
glasses off
uh,
Tony Schiavone?
no, they're still in the box, but I've seen what that figure looks like without the glasses, and it doesn't look a fucking thing like current
No, it
Tony
doesn't.
Schiavone. I did see somebody repaint that head on Instagram for like a 90s Tony Schiavone custom,
Hell
and
yeah.
weirdly, that works.
Yeah, that's what I would want.
Well, they're not going to do anything that's in the
I
WWE
know
library, so good luck.
it sucks, but
It's yeah. I wish, man. I wish we could get classic JR and classic Tony. But Powertown's doing a classic ring with Gordon Soley. So
oh, are they? I never heard that.
yeah, Steve Rosenthal. I think it was Rosenthal. Yeah, it was Rosenthal because I'm pretty sure Greg Gagne would pronounce Gordon Soley's name correctly. Um, he did an interview recently where he kind of spilled a lot of the plans for Powertown's future, including they are signing ECW guys, which is good.
Ooh,
Um, give me a good Sabu. I'm not buying the Cella figure. Give me Sabu. Um, he did mention that they had a ring in development, and I'm guessing since they paid for the rights to the NWA brand, it's going to be the NWA ring, which I'd buy, probably, maybe. I don't have room for it, but I could be persuaded. They did also recently reveal, Powertown did, that they bought the rights to Remco,
that's right. Yeah.
and I'm sure there's a lot of dudes that are way older than I am that are excited at the idea of getting those figures. I think the idea of a Brody and Hanson 2-pack in that style is really cool. I very much hope that's what they run with. They kind of have to do a Vern Gagne in that style because he's a big omission from the AWA line because he's fucking Vern Gagne. I
Don't
don't know, like Rock and Roll Express in that style would be cool, I guess.
don't you think though that the Remco is gonna go the way of the Hasbro because like you had the WWE retros, then you had Chella, then you had Zombie Sailor, and you had all these different lines doing the retro Hasbros, and now you've got WWE doing the WWE Superstars, which is based on the Remco. You've got Asylum doing LOD, and now you've got the Remco line itself making a comeback with through Powertown. So it seems like there's going to be it's a small market, but there's going to be a lot of people doing the that style, right?
Yeah, and also the majors doing their own Remco style figures, and I think they might have been first with it too.
Right, yeah.
But it's the majors, and who gives a shit? Um, it's fascinating to see that style come back because for years I'd seen them like just shit on because like, well, it was just the AWA line and they weren't that like the conventional wisdom was like, well, look at Abdullah Butcher, they didn't make him fat enough, that line sucked, and it's like, yeah, but compare them to the LJN figures, you can actually fucking have wrestling matches with these. These are cool.
I never had much
I
interest in
I
them
like
as a kid, personally.
my older cousin had the Road Warriors. And I was always mad when I was little that I didn't have figures that I could put them with because they were too big to go with the Hasbro's, too small to go with the LJNs. They were kind of around the same size to go with the BCAs, but then they just made the BCA Road Warriors that looked like your fat uncle at the barbecue. That was great. Um, but I like seeing any old style of figure come back. It just feels like we're at a point now, and I've said this a bunch when we talk about wrestling figures. There's too much shit now. And
Yeah.
I never thought I would say that about wrestling figures, but like there's way too much shit coming out. The Mattel stuff is guaranteed. You know that shit's going to come out and you know when it's like if Mattel says like, yeah, Superstar Series 5 is going to be in stores like right before Christmas, you can bet late October, early November they're popping up.
Yeah.
If you place a pre-order for like an independent lines figure, you're waiting a year.
You
I
can
don't give a shit if they tell you these are going to be out in 6 months. Powertown might pull it off because Rosenthal's got like connections from being in the toy industry for decades. But if Chella Toys or Wrestling Trader dropped like, oh, here's the pre-order for the Impact figures they're going to ship in February or March, bullshit.
yeah,
I
you'd
would I
never
wouldn't
know.
believe it for a second. Yeah, we've learned there's too much shit that can go wrong and too much shit that can end up delaying these figures. And I wish Powertown all the success. They have 200 people under contract, a lot of all-time legends. This is our chance to get a Nick Bockwinkel figure after WWE and Jax whiffed really badly after he went in the Hall of Fame. This is our chance to get like they mentioned Bobo Brazil. He's never had a figure. I remember hearing people tell me stories about him all the time when I was a kid because everybody I grew up around was old. It'd be a cool figure to have. They have the Sheik. He's had like two proper figures ever.
It's similar to if you remember that old was it Figures Toy Company that did that old Legends line of like Abdullah and
Yeah,
Sheik? Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I had the Abdullah and the King Kong Bundy and the Kamala. And the Kamala is literally the same torso and left arm from Abdullah, but with like a different leg piece, which is funny because it starts right underneath his chest. So like it's literally like the rib cage down. And he has a different right arm. And if you
So
took the loincloth off Kamala, he had a moon where his wiener should have been.
so it's reminiscent of those like as a classic wrestlers line, but obviously a hell of a lot more detailed. The only one I
Yeah,
purchased at the time, because again, Canadian money, was Stan Hansen, because I thought that was the coolest. I did want to get like Brody. I think that would have been a nice one to have, but yeah, Stan Hansen was the only one I went with.
I ordered Hanson and Brody. I wanted to go back for the others, but like money's tight. It might not be as tight going forward, so I might be able to get a little stupid the next time around. But yeah, I wanted to bring up the figures thing because I wanted to fucking talk about the Root and Jake because those are tremendous figures. And I had a thought before we started recording, just be like, do you want to talk about the Legends of Wrestling games because they're obviously both in Showdown, but I feel like I should probably sit down and do a deep dive with both of those games before we talk about them because
Hmm.
there's a lot of things I'm sure I've forgotten and a lot of old opinions on them that might change if I put hands on them again. But I think that's like a perfect topic for next time because I don't want to talk about 2K. Sorry,
No,
I don't.
I was thinking about popping in the Legends because I think I might have mentioned it earlier. Like I just reconnected my PS2. It's actually one that
Yep,
my nephew gave me. He said, "Do you want a PS2?" And it's a slim one. I've never had a slim one. I was like, "Sure, I'll take that." That's when I started playing the WWE games, and I saw Legends of Wrestling, and I was like, you know what? I might pop that in as well. So I think that's a good topic for next time.
I gotta figure out how I'm gonna play Legends One again because I think that's the one that I don't have on PS2. I have the other two, but I'm also in the unique position I own the Game Boy Advance LOW2, so I can always pop that one in again and have some fun with it. But I think that about wraps us up. I'm trying not to have like a 2.5 hour podcast this time. So for Liger Busa, I am Bongo. We hope you enjoyed our little trip down memory lane for the history of WWE games under THQ. And we will see you next week to potentially talk about the acclaimed Legends of Wrestling games, which are probably the only good games they ever made. Have a good day.